MidJourney, beginner's guide for 2023. We are entering Q2 of 2023 here. Actually, I guess we're fully in it. It's been a while. I've been teaching MidJourney for a while. I've been using it for a long time. I use it on a near daily basis. This video is going to contain everything you need to go from discovering what it is to using it professionally on some crazy level. And unlike a lot of the videos that say from 0 to pro or something like that, there's a lot of secrets baked into this video. Instead of doing a big multi-part course like I did for my original beginner's guide, which is still super useful if you want to watch it, link in the description, I'm just going to pack everything into one video. So we got time codes in the description, chapter markers on the YouTube player, and I'm even going to have some on screen. This is going to be intense, this is going to be awesome, and I have so much to share with you. Let's jump in and first answering what MidJourney is. If you somehow are discovering this video and don't know, no shame in that, but it is at this point a paid product, which is unfortunate. MidJourney is an AI art generator, a tool that uses a process called clip, which is sorting images based on what they are, the styles within them, the type of medium that they were made with, and diffusion, which takes a Gaussian noise pattern, just random noise, and tries to create those objects, those subjects, those styles from that noise. And then it trains itself to do that. Unlike other models like Stable Diffusion and things like that, MidJourney is constantly being retrained on itself, and they have a lot of wizardry happening behind the scenes with regards to how they manipulate the prompt you give it to give you the best results, which makes it incredibly powerful and a lot easier to get up and running with, beautiful basic results, but there's a lot you can do to really manipulate and control it. And that's what we're going to get into here. To use MidJourney, you will need a Discord account. Discord is a video calling, voice chatting, text chatting client, kind of like the old Skype days, TeamSpeak, IRC channels, if you've ever used those, like a big instant messenger client. And there's Discord as a platform, as its own thing. And then you have individual servers based on interests, companies, brands. I have my own server for my community, things like that. And you will need a free Discord account to join with MidJourney. So you click sign in here. It will ask you to sign in with your Discord account or make one if you haven't already. I'm going to go ahead and sign in here. I love the easy QR code scan login. It's going to ask you for permissions to recognize your account and give you access to your server. It specifically says what it can and cannot do. Sorry if you wanted it to make a mixtape. And then it's going to throw you at the MidJourney website, and you're going to have nothing here if you haven't done anything with it. And you're going to be like, what the heck? What am I supposed to do here? MidJourney actually operates through this Discord client. Instead of having a web interface, which they are supposed to be working on, it operates through the bot, interacts with Discord itself to make it easier to use, but also, I guess, to give them less dev work on the website. Again, it's coming soon. And so if you are just on their website, none of this is helpful to you right now. So what you need to do is go to your username at the bottom here, which should be your Discord username, click the 3 dots and choose Go to Discord. This is going to take you to their server. I use the desktop client for Discord instead of the web browser version. You don't have to download anything. You don't have to use the desktop client if you don't want. I do because it's easier for me to show you things and because I use it on a daily basis. Also, if you get taken here to this old FAQ channel and it's like, whoa, messages failed to load, it's fine. Their invite is just set up to take you to a channel that doesn't exist anymore. You got all the stuff on the side. I'm going to switch to my full Discord view here. This is what Discord looks like when you're really using it. Got friends lists, server lists are these circles over on the left. So I have a art category with MidJourney here, and this is the MidJourney server. So the far left are the servers that you're in. So you might be in some others. We're going to make a private server in this video so that you can organize your stuff. To the right of that is going to be the channel names of the different channels available in the server. So the analogy I used in my last course was that Discord is like an office park. The individual Discord servers are like buildings in that office park. So you might have a building that's primarily occupied by a bank or by support for a restaurant or something. Then the channels are going to be the individual floors or departments of that building. With there's threads and other kind of micro conversations that would be the individual rooms. So we're going to go ahead and just go to the basic announcements thread, which shows all of the updates for the program. So for today, they introduced new billing email address. You can reach out for billing issues. They have a new style for their anime version of MidJourney that we'll cover as well. And there's some new moderation tools coming that is actually pretty exciting. So you've got lots of information here. You got recent changes to MidJourney on the whole, which gives you updates about new features separate from the server announcements. You got rules about being on the server. Basic stuff. They will often pop up polls with regards to getting feedback for how to direct MidJourney. You can join in there. You got rooms for support. And then you have the rooms that you can jump into to start making prompts. And we're going to jump in here. It's not going to let me use the newcomer rooms because I am not a newcomer. But we're going to jump in here and show you what that experience would be like. So you scroll all the way down. This is going to be super overwhelming at first, but do not get stressed. We're basically going to leave this area and do it in your own private sandbox instead of dealing with all of this in a moment. But I want to show you what kind of the expected first steps are. So you go to one of the newbie rooms. You'd have to subscribe to MidJourney now because the trial is temporarily disabled in order to use it. So you'd have to go to your subscription settings and sign up for a plan or something like that. They do have a cheap $10 a month one, which would be the way to go for most of you who are just starting out. I'm on the big pro plan because I do a ton of generations and use my photos for stuff and all of that jazz. But at this point, you would have to be on the paid plan to use it. Unfortunately, they have disabled the trial. But you hop in here to the newbie room, and you just start typing. So I'm going to walk you through. We're just going to generate our first image. So you type /, which gives you a bunch of different commands for different Discord bots. Bots are just like services that run through Discord that you can interact with to do certain things. And so it gives you a whole list of a bunch of them for different things that might be in the server that you're in. But we're just going to type /imagine. All of the main image generation in MidJourney is created through this /imagine command. We're going to click prompt. So we're just going to throw something, at the wall and see what sticks. So I'm going to say a very happy puppy sitting by a park bench. The puppy is a very good boy, smiling, waiting for pets. And we send. Now it gives you this message here showing that it received our prompt, it's waiting to start, and it's going to generate the image that we have requested. Now what you will quickly discover in these public rooms is that it's going to start showing you this, and then a bunch of other people are probably going to start generating images, and yours is going to fly away. Yep, it's gone. It's all gone. My image cannot be found. It can't. There is a button in the top right of the Discord user interface here. This little inbox button. Looks like an old paper tray inbox. Oh, but ours just popped up here too. Ah, look at the good puppy. Look at the good puppies. They're so good. If you don't see it, or you get a little red indicator over here saying your message was made, and you can't find it, click the little inbox icon, and you're going to have unreads, mentions, things like that. It's going to have your most recent thing is going to be the most recent person who tagged you, which if you're just using the Discord bot here, it's going to have your message, and then you can jump to it and we can start interacting with it. So you have some controls. So by default, MidJourney generates a grid of 4 images for you to work with, and these are going to be lower resolution, but you've got 4 images that you can consider, that you can use, that you can whatever. Now you could save this out on its own. Like you could just right click, save image, copy it into your photo editor, whatever. These are going to be low res. They're not going to be super useful, but if you just want to grab those, that's fine. Or you have the option to upscale any of the individual images. So you got U1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's in the grid of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so you can upscale any one of them. So I'm going to say upscale 2, but then you also have V1, V2, V3, and V4. These generate another grid of 4 images based on this one as an idea to generate more like that. So let's say I upscaled number 2 because it's just perfect and I want more like, or I want the high res copy. Upscaling just means to make bigger. It's going to render it with more detail at a higher resolution. With the newer V5 model, it doesn't change anything about it. It just spits out the direct copy because it renders that way by default. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But say version 1 here, this first one, I really like, but I want to see if it can do something else with it. I can click V1. Now by default, it's just going to fire off for you. For me, it's going to ask me for any additional prompt stuff because I have remix enabled, which is a really cool feature. We'll get to it. We sent off those commands. But again, the server is packed. I have no clue where anything went. But I have these pings here in my mentions where you can watch the progress go, which is always really cool. You can watch the images as they generate here, basically watching the computer think, assuming you can keep Discord in the same spot long enough. You can't always. It's also just because it just finished it. And here is our variation. We have 4 more images based on that one cute image that we can continue iterating on or upscale one of these. You also have a little swirly button here, which just will send off that same command to generate a new set of images based on the same idea, in case you want to try again, in case it didn't quite land, you know, that kind of thing. We also have our upscale that we were waiting on. We can jump to that message. And now we have a big high resolution copy of this image that we can, again, save out. We can view on the web on the MidJourney website, which we will come back to in just a second. You also have some options for different versions of upscaling. You can make more variations like the V1 through V4 buttons here. So if I really, really like this, but I want to see what more look like, I can click make variations. It would generate 4 more. I can also mark it as favorite, which will show up on the website for you to keep track of some of your favorites. So that is the basic process of using MidJourney. That is it. You just type /imagine and whatever you want to generate. And it will take a little bit and spit it out. Now, we're going to go take a look at the MidJourney website real quick. I want to go ahead and give you a disclaimer that in this course, people get really annoyed by this, but it's by design. We're going to bounce around a little bit. So right now we just generated our first image. Instead of just overwhelming you with all kinds of additional prompting tips and all of that, we're going to go take a look at the website so you can see what you can do with your images. And I'm going to bounce you back and forth what I consider a natural path of discovery of using MidJourney and getting the most out of it as you go, as to not just throw way too much info dump at you up front. So you can find a natural, organic way that you would navigate through using MidJourney here. So you can see here we also got whatever you want to generate. It tried to put in a bunch of text here, which MidJourney does not produce great text, but we did get, I really like this image. I don't know what it is, but I like it. I kind of like the dude staring at the mirror. He's a little creepy, but I can mask out the text and do something with that. The others aren't super useful to me. So I am, for fun, going to go ahead and upscale 1 and 2, and I will save those for later. But as mentioned, with one of our upscales, which I have now, of course, completely lost, there it is, we can view it on the website. And that takes us to the image page on the website. Every image you generate with MidJourney is not just in Discord. It's stored on MidJourney's servers. So it's available on their website through your profile. You just have to log in with the same Discord account used to generate it. And then on your profile page will be virtually every image you have ever generated with MidJourney. I generate my images in what's called the stealth mode, meaning that it's not displayed publicly on my profile unless I want it to be. Which means if you click on, if we go back to our original link here, if you just click on your user profile link here, this takes you to your public page, where I haven't generated stuff in a very long time. However, if you click home in the top left, it takes you to your private homepage, which has all of your generations here, which is really cool. You can see here, those two we just upscaled, that good boy puppy we just upscaled, and a bunch of stuff for some visualizer projects I was working on. So all of your images are going to be here. If you ever lose track of them in Discord, if you ever delete a image or a channel or something in Discord, you'll have them here. Now, you have a lot on MidJourney's website, and I want to go through the basics of using it, just because I think the more you use it, the more you will get a greater experience out of MidJourney in the first place. So you can view your images, you can sort by the upscales, so just the final products, the grids themselves, if you want to go back and like pick one from them, or you can view them all. You have on the individual images the ability to hide them from view, or rather publish them to view if you are in your private generated stuff that we're going to talk about. You can rank your images. Ranking is super important because it helps MidJourney train its algorithm. By ranking images higher, it tells the algorithm that this is a favorable result for the prompt that it was given. I'm not going to rank this one because it wasn't super really related to the prompt. Actually, yeah, I'm not going to rank either of those. But I am going to rank this upscale because it was a great one. So I want to say, yes, I love it. It did a great job. A poor ranking with the throw up emoji would be saying, hey, this didn't do a very good job. And it helps over time train the new versions of their image generating algorithm as they see fit. If you try to abuse it by ranking wrongly back to back to back or whatever, they will ban you for it. So you have that ability. You can click on individual images, take a look at them. You can see when it was generated, some of the flags used to generate, some of the commands and things like that. You can see related images generated by other people, which is really handy for improving your prompts as well as just finding inspiration. You can save the image. I'm just going to save the PNG to your local storage. Takes a second to fire off for some reason. I'm not a huge fan of that, but there we go. It downloaded. You can add it to your favorites, which just helps you find it for later. It doesn't change anything about how anyone else sees it. You also have these 3 dots. which allow you to open the image in a new tab or find it on Discord, which is really handy. You can use it as your profile picture or your cover banner. You can report ones that are either like harmful or contain nudity or something like that that are against MidJourney's rules. You can create collections to group different images together for, collections like you would with normal art or just organizing things by folders. You can also come in here and copy a lot of information about this prompt. You can copy the full command, which is going to give you exactly what you use to generate it. So if we come in here, we do /imagine. I hit tab whenever that pulls up so I don't have to click. Control V to paste. Gives me exactly everything I typed in to generate this prompt, which includes a little up beta for the beta upscaler, which we'll talk about in a bit. You can copy just the prompt, which is not going to contain that little parameter at the end. So I can say /imagine, paste that in. We just have the text. You can also copy the seed and the job ID, which will be used to identify the image and the information used to generate that image later on. So lots of powerful stuff you can do there just on your own images. And you can go in here and click this Rate Jobs button, and it will take you through all of your past generated images on a queue to rank them to help, again, improve the algorithm and train things. You can also go over here to Explore. And Explore lets you see the entire community's set of generations, which allows you to get tons of inspiration, see what other cool stuff people are doing, rank them to, again, help train the algorithm, keep track of what you want. For example, these blue flowers are absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to add it to my favorites, and I'm going to rank it very positively. Now, let's see. What else is this? These are just the hot ones, so these are going to be like the best of the best. I love this noir style. I'm gonna rank it very high, and I'm also going to add it to my favorites. And once you have favorited some images, you can now view them over here in the top column where it says favorites. And this way you can come back to them to analyze their prompts, to take ideas from them, and so on. Again, the image I just favorited did not show up. MidJourney's website is not the most stable thing. It should be here. It's not at the moment. Sorry. I'm not responsible for it. And they even have a favorited category under favorites. It's something. But mostly you stick to the community tab. You find ones you like. I love this cat painting. This is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to rate it highly. I'm going to save it. But also, if you want to start working with the prompts that other people have used, you can click the 3 dots and copy the full command or prompt like I talked about. And instead you can just do /imagine, paste that in there. You can see everything they worked with. They put in the aspect ratio twice, which we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. So I'm going to delete one of those. And we can fire that off and see if we get a similar looking image to what they did, or we can start iterating on it. Say we like this, but we want a slightly different style, or we want to change something about it. We can do all of that just by looking at the images and, manipulating them. And then you can still see similar, related ones based on the prompts. Since it has all of that data, it can find you similar looking images and work with that. It is really powerful to go through here, both for inspiration, for getting prompt tips to see how people achieve certain styles or, produce certain characters. And by going through and ranking images, you help improve the image generation process in general. So I highly recommend when you're not, when you're sparse for ideas, you're not generating something yourself, spend time here. There's also a rank pairs thing to where you can spend more time in a queue ranking stuff to, help improve the algorithms. And it tries to build like similar looking images so you can rank which ones are better so it knows how to favorite things. This is a really cool aspect of it. Like I said, it's one of the big advantages of MidJourney. Now you can follow individual creators if you like. So we can scroll down, find something we think is really cool. Here we go. Cliche like vaporwave thing. Maybe I like that this person made this. I'm going to look at their profile. This person has 205,000 generated jobs with MidJourney. They have spent a long time in there. So much so that the website's having trouble showing it. You can see their collections here at the top. Let's say I really like their work, the stuff they've been doing, the styles they achieve. I can click follow. And now when I go home, or rather, now when I go to explore, I can click the follows tab, and it's going to show me the most recent images in a feed, just like the normal homepage, but from the people I follow. I really hope they get their web servers together. There we go. Now you can see a bunch of stuff from people that I follow, which is a better way to curate this kind of Explorer feed. Now we can go back. It has finished generating our image, but again, we lost it. So we're going to click the inbox icon. We're going to find it. Now this was using that cat prompt that we found, and it has generated 4 images that are kind of similar based on what, the prompt comes up with. When you feed MidJourney a prompt, you're not going to get the same result for the same prompt every time. That's not how AI art generation works. And so it's a good thing because it means you're never going to make like a carbon copy of someone else's unless you go out of your way to do so. But it means like if you want a specific style, you will have to work with it. I really like how it produced number 2 here and kind of number 1. So I'm going to upscale both of those and we're going to move on. Now remember, if you fire off an upscale job or a render job or something, you don't need to act on it immediately. It will stay here in Discord and you can find it in your mentions. And at any point in time, you can again go back to your homepage on the MidJourney website, refresh it, and eventually find what you generated. Doesn't update immediately. It used to. So next, let's talk about the anatomy of a prompt. What makes up an image prompt? What are the parts of it? It's mainly divided into kind of 3 things, excluding the imagine command. So you have the /imagine that you type out. Click here, tap here. It works on phones too. There's a Discord app for phones. Then you have your description, your whatever you want it to be. For example, this person's prompt was beautiful woman, cyberpunk style, pink and purple. That would be what it is. So we're gonna say cyberpunk woman in leather jacket in rainy Tokyo neon alleyway. MidJourney does really well with the cyberpunk styles. That's why everyone does it all the time. I know it's really overplayed at this point, but it's a popular aesthetic. I'm a huge fan myself. We got a smiling 51-year-old man playing a grand piano in a beautiful meadow. That's someone else's. That is the descriptor of, the subject of what you want. And typically that's broken up into a more like direct subject-oriented description in plain text, and then there's going to be some commas and then just a bunch of extra descriptive material. So right now I just have cyberpunk woman in a rainy Tokyo neon alleyway, but then you see here they have a bunch of stuff with commas, and so I could say long pink hair, wearing headphones with blue eyeshadow, red lipstick, that kind of thing. And then the third part of your prompt is the parameters. And there are parameters for many, many different things, and we're going to cover a bunch of them in this, guide. But one of them is for something like the aspect ratio, to generate a different width or height of your image instead of the default 1:1 square size. You've got seeds you can use. You've got a chaos element that can introduce some randomness to your prompt to make it more interesting. You've got a quality slider, which takes a lot longer to generate and uses up more of your cycles for your subscription, but produces a better image. Lots of little things like that. And so for this, I'm going to say --AR for aspect ratio, space 2:3, because 2:3 is more of a typical portrait. It's if you have, a standard film camera, it's a 3:2 sensor or film slide, I guess large form or medium format, maybe not. But then if you turn it vertically like you would for a portrait, it becomes 2:3. I have some various aspect ratios showing on screen right now. Woo! Obviously a standard computer screen would be 16:9. This video you're watching now is in a 2:1 aspect ratio. Your smartphone would be 9:16 typically. Those are aspect ratios. So we're gonna fire off this command. Boop. And ultimately, that is what a prompt is consisting of. That your imagine command, your subject description, your plain text for what you want, maybe some additional qualifiers or descriptors, and then your parameters for manipulating the image generation process. That's the anatomy of a prompt. That is what you need to know to honestly play a lot and have fun with them in the first place. I also wanted to highlight here, while we are waiting on our image to generate, you can interact with other people's images here. So, and they might thank you if you're upscaling one that they didn't want to spend an upscale on. But like, for example, maybe I like this realistic photography of, Demon Slayer people. Maybe I want number, or the hands are weird on these, so I guess number 2. I can go ahead and upscale this. Or I can go ahead and make a variation of number 2 and make more like it and continue iterating however much I want. It's a very open and like interactive creative process, which is really exciting. All right, here we have our rendering of a cyberpunk woman in a leather jacket in rainy neon Tokyo alleyway with long pink hair, wearing headphones with blue eyeshadow and red lipstick. We have our 2:3 aspect ratio for each of the 4 images. And for the most part, it kind of stuck to our descriptor. You can't really see the blue eyeshadow on most of these. The blue kind of went into the hair. But for the most part, this is what I want. Like, this is a pretty cool style. I'm going to say we upscale 1 and 3 and maybe 4. Only upscale the ones that you really want to keep. Otherwise, save them for later and decide later as you go through your iterative process. It is a lot easier for me to just go ahead and upscale them and work with images individually to figure out where I want my creative process to go, but not everyone's going to be that way. There's the variations we generated on that Demon Slayer, image. You can see here our upscales waiting to start. And it will tag us when they're ready. So that was the basic anatomy of a prompt, but there is, as I showed, a lot of different things that you can add to any given prompt to help better describe what you want, to create different styles. You can really build anything with the MidJourney prompts and feed it so much information about what you want. And we didn't even... You can actually use already generated pictures as references to help better direct the art that you want generated too. Here's one of our upscales. Yep, they are coming through now. Now this is with the older MidJourney V4 model. There's a new image model that they generate things based off of called V5 that produces much more photorealistic images. By default, V4 is still what it's set to because V5 is still in testing. And so these don't look the most photorealistic. They look a little bit more hand-drawn, color pencil-y because that's the default kind of MidJourney style. But the new model looks a lot more photorealistic by default. Next up, you have the extra things I mentioned that you can inject into your prompts to produce better images. These are styles, flavor text, art mediums, the purpose of the thing you're trying to create. You can do composition, camera choices, all sorts of things like that. And before we get there, I'm going to show you my first little tidbit. We're going to dive in a lot into like working with MidJourney more independently and away from all the noise in a little bit. But I'm going to show you my first little tidbit for working more privately in that you can direct message the bot. So the MidJourney bot that delivers your images, you can click on its name and you can add it to your own server, which we'll talk about in a minute, or you can just message it. I'm going to send hi, so it takes me to my direct messages UI for Discord here. It's not going to respond when I say hi. But now we can generate our images here, which is a little bit quieter, a little bit more focused, a little bit more, oriented around what we're trying to do. And so now we can focus a little bit. So I will say right now, from now on, moving forward, all of the images that I'm going to generate of the same subject are going to use the same what's called a seed. The seed is just the noise pattern that is used to generate an image. And so you can tell it a seed to continue to use the same seed over and over to try to get more consistent results since it bases it on the same starting place. You don't need to know a ton about this just yet, but I'm letting you know that I'm going to show you differences by using the same starting point each time. Let's do something completely different from the cyberpunk aesthetic. Let's go back to the MidJourney website. We're going to explore. We're going to look at, community favorite images. What is something cool we could make? I am absolutely in love with this skyline warping around, this bridge going through it with space in the background. I'm going to save that image myself. And we're going to start with this. So let's first analyze the prompt that they use. So the core part of the prompt that we've already talked about, space science images photo library. That is the main thing it's trying to tell MidJourney to create, which frankly isn't a whole lot. But then you have all these other things in the style of surreal city scenes. So we told it a style to emulate, which is actually a couple styles, city scenes, surreal style. Then we have some more stylistic, influence, realistic anamorphic art, swirling colors as an element to consider, trance compilation CD, so compilation CD. So you can tell it things like for an album cover, for a comic book cover, for a movie poster. You can tell it these things that are the purpose of what you're making as an influence for the design elements it will pick up based on what it's been trained on. It hasn't been trained on everything, but you'd be surprised at the weird random grandpa core forest punk kind of descriptors that I've never even heard of before in my life and wouldn't believe were real until working with MidJourney. We got virtual reality. We've got a person's name. I'm going to briefly touch on this. Joel Robinson. I'm assuming that's an artist. Let's look him up. Joel Robinson. Character featured in the American Science... Oh, from Mystery Science Theater 3000. Maybe it's the photographer? Ah, so he's got some very surreal art styles. So you can reference other artists that MidJourney might have been trained on to take cues from their style. This is one of the biggest controversies of AI art within, you know, the broader art communities, because it's seen as theft or as, you know, plagiarism, whatever. I think there is a safe way to use those cues as very minor influences into the style that you're trying to make without really encroaching on their territory or trying to copy them. There's the whole quote, great artist or good artists copy great artists deal, in terms of like, you take what you like from everyone that you watch and consume and appreciate in terms of their work, and you take little nuggets from them and you combine them into your own unique style. It's not cool to just slap in some artist names and completely rip off their style. It's not okay. And frankly, I would recommend, whenever possible, not using artist names in your prompts at all, just to avoid that altogether. But that's not going to make everyone happy, and it may be easier to reference people you know, their style, to build on that, to get you a starting point as you're figuring this out for fun anyway. Just be careful. Then we have one last little descriptor phrase, multi-layered dimensions, which is definitely appropriate here. So we're going to click the three dots, copy, full command, and we're going to message the bot. We're going to say /imagine, which we can use here, just direct messaging the bot, and paste that in. So we went over the prompt itself, but then we have the parameters, like aspect ratio, 51 by 91. I get the feeling they fed it, like, describe. I get the feeling they just pulled this from another image. We have a quality of 2, a Stylize parameter, which we haven't talked about yet, of 750. It goes from 0 to 1,000. And then the new version 5. For the sake of clarity of what we're talking about right now, we're just going to focus on the prompt itself. And then I'm going to say seed of 8675309. Got it, I got it. All right, so this is the prompt that the person used. We're just going to generate a basic 1x1 image. We're going to fire it off. But we're also going to fire one off where we add more to it. So I'm going to hit the up arrow, which is going to recall my most recent prompt. If that doesn't show up, Control Z also pulls it up. And then you click the prompt button there. So now we have our prompt with all of these different style influences. But maybe we don't want it to look like Joel Robinson's art. Maybe we don't want it to look like a trance compilation CD. Maybe we don't want swirling colors. I kind of like the rest of it. But maybe we want for Doctor Strange, because it had the like city folding on itself kind of dealio going on. Maybe we want a cinematic sci-fi film still frame. So that is one of the things you could use, is we want a still frame from a cinematic film of some sort. Maybe we want it to be more with alien spaceships in the sky. So we can add in these extra little elements of what we want to show up, and we can add in extra stylistic, influences. So we're gonna show the difference between what it just generated, and again, we're using the same seed, and adding in these extra descriptors in place of the ones from the original prompt. And you can see here, we're already getting something different from the original posts we were looking at, both because we are removing some of those extra chaos elements and stylized elements and stuff that we haven't covered yet, but also because we're using a different aspect ratio. The aspect ratio, again, that's the dimensions of width to height, and I have a video on my main channel about this if you need it, linked below. That actually has a pretty big influence on the composition of the scene that you want. So for example, this has a long, you know, winding little trail here, as well as really tall buildings and a sky. It has this really tall composition because it's a really tall aspect ratio. The default 1:1 aspect ratio is very square, and so it has to change, you know, where the elements might go. We'll be covering aspect ratio more in a little bit. All right, now we've gotten something different. By swapping out some of the descriptors of the artist, the trans compilation CD, swirling colors and things like that, but specifying instead that it's for Doctor Strange, that we want a cinematic still from a, from a film, that we want alien spaceships in the sky. We get those alien spaceships. We get something a lot more like epic in terms of scope of the scene to be more cinematic. And we've got something a lot more sci-fi-y versus just kind of city bent. But now we can take it a step further and manipulate it even more. So we're still using the same seed. I'm going to tap my up arrow to bring that prompt back. Actually, that's going to take me, now that I have already sent that prompt, it's going to take me to edit my last sent message, which is hi. We don't want to do that. Instead, I'm going to do Control Z, which is going to give us that prompt. So now we want to manipulate it even more. So maybe instead of just a sci-fi film still frame, we want for 1981 movie poster. So now we get something that looks a lot more like what might be expected on an old movie poster. We've got that hero character in the middle. We've got a lot more of that like framing elements going on here. We have a little bit of text because movie poster and album covers often prompt text out of MidJourney. Frustrating. You can do -- no text at the end to try to combat that. Doesn't always work. We have something a lot more kind of moving towards the center line of focus for a movie poster, and it usually starts adding in like hero characters and things like that. So those are the different like style influences that we can have. Well, there's a million of them. I have other videos on my channel if you want a list of style influences, and actually I'm going to have some resources we'll talk about in a little bit. But those are the ways that those influences could impact your image. As one more example here, just to show you this kind of thing, we are going to pull back up that prompt. And instead of cinematic still frame 1981 movie poster, we're going to say Gothic painting in cathedral. Everything else is the same. It's still even for Doctor Strange. It's still all the sci-fi elements. It's still got alien spaceships in the sky, but instead we're going for a Gothic cathedral painting style. Now, this didn't actually change the medium of the image in the way that I intended. We would have to kind of completely reword the prompt. But you did see here that the cathedral and Gothic style did heavily influence the subject of our creation. We still have that warped perspective and the grand scale with the planets and the spaceships, but now we got Gothic cathedral castle style architecture instead of the New York City landscape or the sci-fi buildings. This is what I'm talking about. You can combine so many things. And so next I want to show you the means of doing style fusion for your images. So we're going to scroll back up, go with our original prompt here, seed and everything. I'm going to do /imagine, paste it in. Now we have the in the style of surreal city scenes. So I am going to delete this. And we're going to say style fusion of surreal city scenes and Renaissance. I spelled that wrong. Whatever. Painting. Did I spell it wrong? I don't think it did. And Renaissance Gothic painting. So we're using style fusion, surreal city scenes, and Renaissance Gothic painting. Same seed, same everything else as our original prompt here, which gave us our very city-esque surreal look. But this time we're fusing those two styles. You can do this with all manner of styles. If you do this or what's called multi-prompting, which we'll get to, you can combine multiple different styles together. You can do this with different artists that you're taking inspiration from to create something wholly unique by referencing, one style or one artist style and another artist style that look completely different and combining them together with your own ideas of extra stuff to make it your own. You can really bash a lot of things together with MidJourney. Now you see here, we still have the surreal style. We still have this crazy warped perspective. This third one is very, very similar to the original image we were taking inspiration from. But most of them are taking on a little bit more of a painterly style. We've got those Renaissance little clouds around this one. The color scheme has changed. We end up with a subject person again for some reason. But we're definitely taking a little bit of an influence there. We can do something really crazy. Copying all of this again, or just hitting Control-Z. Space Science Images Photo Library. We're going to say Style Fusion. Something I did forget to do was take out the Joel Robinson name as well. We're going to say Style Fusion. Surrealism. Mixed with hyper-realistic surrealist painting mixed with hyper-realistic 3D render. Something you want to note when iterating is you want to change as few variables as possible each time you go. That way you know you're going in the right direction and that you know the change that you made actually had an influence on what you're trying to do. This is a bad habit of mine in that I will change everything all at once because I have ADHD and struggle to, you know, do things slowly one step at a time. I just want to reach in and get the exact changes that I want. But if you continue to tweak one little element at a time, especially when using the same seed, which again, we'll talk about in a moment, don't worry. You're going to much better navigate a path towards the image that you're actually after. Now we've still got the swirling colors, we've got the surrealism, but now we're just completely off into nowhere. I did change a lot all at once, but you can see my point here is ultimately to just show you the influences of the different styles on what you can do. And again, there's no end of list of them. I'll flash some up on screen with little comparisons super quick. We'll cover more, and I'll even show you some resources in a little bit, time-coded sections in the description for where you can get lots of more tips for this. But honestly, just spend a lot of time I mean, we found this image. Did I save it? I hope I saved it. Yeah, we did. Spend a lot of time going through the MidJourney community feed and finding images that just stand out to you, that you want to take inspiration from. Because there are so many. And it will really help you navigate, like, what exactly you're after. And you can take prompt tips from them by seeing what they have. I like a lot of these. I'm going to save them just for inspiration for later. Although I was more going for the city skyline kind of look in the first place, not sci-fi. That shot's really trippy. All right, we have gone through, we've made some images, we have learned about prompting and style influence and how to recall our last prompts really quickly, but we have a bunch of images to work with, and we are either just DMing the bot with like an endless feed, which is really hard to keep up with, or perhaps you're still in the various public channels on the MidJourney server, and you know, it's so hard to keep track of what you're doing and stay on task this way. So let's talk about some organization tips for your files and for MidJourney to get the best results. First and foremost, I recommend having your own private server for MidJourney so that you can organize things. Going back to that office building analogy I mentioned before, where your servers are your individual office buildings and the floors are your different channels here. If you're just taking up space in someone else's office, it's really hard to get, you know, to spread out, to have your stuff protected, to have your creative space and have your thoughts, you know, aligned and focused. And you want your own space for that. And thankfully, making a Discord server is free. So in your server list on the left, you probably don't have as many as I do. Scroll all the way to the bottom and click Add a Server. I'm going to say Create My Own. For me and my friends, default name, whatever's fine, especially if you don't plan on sharing it or inviting anyone. You don't have to change anything. You don't got to personalize it. You just click Create. And then you want to make a bunch of channels for different things. I'm not going to keep using this one because I've already made one and I want to walk you through what you should have. But theoretically, you should have something, a little something like this. Now, I have a lot. Don't let it overwhelm you. But these are different. So we have categories. Categories would be like the floors, whereas the channels would be the offices. So I have categories. So for example, I have merch ideas. Granted, I have a scrap channel in there. Maybe I should not. make it its own thing. There we go. But I have merch ideas. So specific generations that I'm going to work on or inspiration for creating merch. So stuff I want to keep track of there. I've got stuff for client work. So again, it could be inspiration or it could be generations that I'm doing, for example, for YouTube thumbnails, for album covers and visualizations I'm doing for our music projects at backingtrack.gg. I've got a category for my personal projects. So I've got stuff relating to like storytelling. I've got stuff I was trying to generate for RPG Maker for game assets. I've got stuff for Dungeons and Dragons I want to work at. Got stuff for glitch arts. I wanted to generate images for me to run through all my analog glitch gear to make glitch art on a CRT with. And then I have in it a massive, what I call inspo category, which is just all the things that I find around the internet for inspiration. Think of it like a Pinterest board. You could just use Pinterest, and in fact, I do use Pinterest pretty off and on, religiously when I'm actually into it. I use it pretty heavily. So my inspo channels on Discord would be very similar to my different Pinterest boards that I would have for different things. And so I've got one for design ideas. I've got one for portraits, for glitch art that I find, on Instagram, on Reddit, on whatever. I'll either take screenshots and directly upload them, or I'll just link the post if I'm in a hurry. All sorts of inspiration that I either want to learn how to do, take inspiration from, take little bits and pieces from, things that just inspire me either for my studio itself or for my style to make, what I want to make. And organizing all your stuff in your different channels. And it's super easy to make a channel. You just right click, create channel. This is a channel. You can do dashes or underscores for spaces. Create channel. Add all you want in terms of non-MidJourney related stuff for your inspiration and stuff. That way you can have it all in one place. Because you can use reference images, as I alluded to before. And so you want a place to kind of upload these easily, to click on them and copy the links to them. This will help you out immensely, both for your generations and for just your overall creative space. Think of this as your canvas, as your drawing desk, whatever. You want it all in one place. So make your channels for the different things you'd like to do, and then we have to invite the bot to our server. So go back to your DMs that you had with the bot, or find the bot on the MidJourney server, delivering images to people. Click the name, and click Add to Server. And here we're going to tell it the Discord server we want to join. And click Continue. I recommend leaving all of these here because they're required to use MidJourney. And click Authorize. Now I already have it in my server, so we don't need to worry about that. Now when we come over here in our private server, /imagine is right here and ready to go. So immediately I can start separating my work into these different categories. And I can say /imagine, if we want a t-shirt idea, horned demon monster profile for business headshot, medium shot, gothic horror, grainy 35mm film photo on VHS. And then since it's a t-shirt, we'll do an aspect ratio of 2:3. Say I want to generate that to put it on a t-shirt. I can start immediately generating images in my t-shirt category that whenever I come back to my idea for a t-shirt, I can either keep working on or copy out of or do whatever. And so we can let it generate here for a second. Now we have some gothic style profile pictures right here, and just right in here I can upscale them. I can iterate on that one. That one kind of looks like Abraham Lincoln. And we can do all our stuff. And immediately that's a huge boost to the overwhelming, noisy room that everyone else was doing their thing in, right? Yeah. We can take it one step further. So we have our server, we have our category, we have our channels, and you can also make threads in Discord. Threads are just like independent conversations that are still on theme for the channel that you're in. So for example, I'm in a t-shirts channel, but I'm doing a lot of images specifically about this horned monster, but maybe I want to be able to generate images about something else, and I don't want to have to scroll up forever to find what I was doing. So instead of just spamming my chat, I can instead click this plus icon, create a thread. We'll call this Demon King Shirt we have to put some text in. So I usually just copy paste the same idea, or I'll copy a link to or an image of what I've already done. Hit enter, and it's going to pull it up here on the side. So if you want to reference other things in your main chat, you can sometimes keep that up. Usually you have to be in the same channel, or you can just click on the thread name right here in your Discord settings, and you can view it. Now, with how Discord works, the threads will automatically archive, aka stop showing up underneath your channel names after a couple days. They don't go away though. So like, for example, I have this older thread here for Skeleton Kink. It no longer shows up underneath the channel name. I can no longer immediately jump to it, but I can click right here to that thread, pull it up. I can send a new message or create a new variation of this. So I can say, make variation. I want an aspect ratio of 9:16 instead, and I want to use version 5 and submit. And once messages start being sent in that channel, now it pops back up and I can keep working on it. You're not losing anything. So I highly, highly, highly recommend setting up your own private server that you can generate all this stuff in to keep it organized, get your categories of either inspiration or generations you want to make, threads for specific generations you're working on, and really soar. I do want to give a bonus tip here. When you're using reference images or variations on an existing image, you're beholden to the aspect ratio that it was made before. So this is a 4:3 image, but it was also inspired by an even like thinner image. So we already have black bars on this 4:3 image, but it was supposed to be 4:3. And then I told it to make it 16:9. And so all it's doing is stretching up that already weird image. You gotta be careful with your aspect ratios. We'll talk about those in a moment. So the next organization step is, of course, creating a folder structure of some sort on your computer for when you're saving your images. Now you could do this any way that works for you. I'm gonna come over here to my big storage. I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna make a root folder. I'm gonna call this AI art for my AI art projects. And then you could do a similar layout to your, channels. So for example, this could be t-shirts, and then a folder for patterns. And then maybe I want a folder for thumbnails. And maybe I want a folder for album covers. And then you could start organizing by year, or maybe you want year to be organized in here. And for album covers, I want just the Chillwave ones for the Chillwave album. Then I can come over here and start saving my images. So I can come over here to Chillwave thumbnail, save the images that we were using. So I really like this one. Come over here to web. I usually recommend these days clicking the web button and downloading from the MidJourney website, because there are some images you will be sent by MidJourney that there is a higher quality version available on the website than what they compress in Discord, because Discord compresses images now. And so now I can either right click, save image as, come over here to Windows Explorer, click in the field here, Control C to copy, click in this field, Control V to paste, takes us right to that folder. I can call this Tokyo, or it was Neon Rain, save it, or I can just click the save button as we did for Mini and pull it from my downloads folder. Obviously, if you are in a different browser, Firefox by default just dumps everything to one folder. Other browsers may put them in different places. So I can take, for example, our futuristic sciencey thing, bring that back, put that in the t-shirts category, and we're gonna say dimensional skyline as our t-shirt idea. Paste this as our inspiration image, and then I can start manipulating that in Discord to start working with. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but I want to show you one last organizational thing, and that is regardless of whether you're in your private server or on the public server, if you ever want an image sent to you just so you have it more clearly, or information such as the job ID or seed of a given image, you can get that from Discord. So for example, if we scroll all the way down, obviously I showed you how to do these things on the website, but if we find something cool, I'm a huge fan of abstract art. Let's see if anyone's made anything cool here. These are characters. This is not abstract art. Another reason to avoid the public server is people rarely stick to a room's given category. These are all portraits. I realize there's some abstract elements, but come on. Man, this person's been going forever. Pretty sure, yeah, you can make threads On any public server, like my own public Discord server has MidJourney added to it. On any public server you're doing, just make a thread to organize your stuff. It's so much easier. But just as an example, let's say we love this abstract mirrors image here, and we want to be able to work with it. We want information about it. We want to keep track of it better rather than in the public chat. Go over here to these reaction buttons. This lets you react with an emoji. Click it, and we want the envelope. You're not going to see it by default, so just start typing envelope. And you want the basic envelope. Click it, and when you do, you're going to get a little ping. And the MidJourney bot is going to send you that image, and it's going to send you the prompt and the job ID. Now you can jump back to the message that it was from, or you can copy all of this, including the image, to that channel. So let's say, just for argument's sake, I want it in this Chillwave thumbnail. I can just paste the text in here so I have it, and then I want to copy the image with it, just so I can keep track of it together here. And now I have this message I can reference with all of this information about it. And now I can do something really cool. I can say /show, and then it's going to want the job ID. So we copy that job ID out of here, paste it in, and that's not going to work if you're not the owner of it. But if it's your own images, you can. I got an email from a viewer who accidentally deleted one of their Discord channels that contained a bunch of their MidJourney generations, their images, the stuff they wanted to work with, and are freaking out because naturally they lost a bunch of their work. Good news, you don't actually lose anything. So I'm going to show you how to recover your work. First and foremost, there is no way to recover deleted Discord channels, so unfortunately that will be gone, but you can make a new one. You can still access your images though. Every single image you generate is stored in your MidJourney account. So that means you go to MidJourney's website, which is just midjourney.com. You choose sign in with the Discord account that you're using to generate your MidJourney images. Sign in with that account and it will take you to your profile page. Here, it will show you every single image you have ever generated with MidJourney, going back to whenever you started with this account. And you can sort them by ones that are popular, if you've shared them publicly, your newest ones. You can sort by your oldest ones, so you can see how bad some of my very first ones were. They look like MS Paint drawings. It's not the point. From here, though, you can do things with them. Obviously, you can just save out the image itself and photo edit, do whatever you would normally want to do with an image. But with every single image, whether you're in the grid view here or selecting a very specific one, there is a 3-dot little menu right here. You click that, and then you have a couple different options. First and foremost, if you go to open in and then open in Discord, it's going to open a tab with Discord. And if that channel still exists, it will take you to the message that that image was generated in, which is really handy. Obviously, if you deleted the channel, it's probably going to error out. However, you can go over here to copy, and you have a few really cool options. You can copy just the text prompt. You can copy the full command, which is going to have all your extra modifiers. So first and foremost, if we go to copy prompt and then open up here, if we just paste this in, you can see here it has our image sources and our description, but none of the quality, the aspect ratio factors, any of that. If we go to copy command, it's going to copy all of those extra arguments and flags. You still have to type /imagine at the front, but then you can fire it off and it's going to have your aspect ratios, your quality, all those other settings. However, you also have a third thing you can copy, and that is the job ID. Now, if you click this, click job ID, now you have a new command you can use, which is /show, and then you paste in that job ID, which should be this big string of letters and numbers. Press enter, and it's going to recall this exact generation that was in your Discord before and present it to you. Boom, there we go. We have this exact image, the exact command, the exact generation. It doesn't remake it, it just calls it back. And then from there, we can remix it, we can remaster it, we can upscale it, we can do whatever. And so you can do the same that with individual images, or you can do it with the four-way spread. So I can go over here, copy job ID, type /show, paste in the job ID, and boom, we already have that. And then we can still go through, like I said, variations, upscales, all of that. Fairly straightforward. Don't panic. Obviously, if you want everything back exactly like you'd have it, you'd have to sort by oldest and copy every single job ID and make a replication of that channel. Probably not worth it, but you know, when you pick out your favorites or there's ones you specifically want to work on, you still have them accessible. They are not gone. So I do recommend spending some time at some point in between generations to filter, sort, build collections, things like that, now that it's a feature in MidJourney if you can. But otherwise, you have the prompt, you have the job ID. You could go to the MidJourney website, go to Explore, paste in the job ID, hit search. Now, since this is a new one, it might not show up, but you can see it's right here. It pulls up that image, and we have all sorts of other jobs relating to it. Unfortunately, it won't bring us that exact image, but theoretically, once you found it in here, you could then do the same song and dance of copy the prompt, all of that. All right, next, let's talk about reference images. As part of your prompt, you can use one or more images as reference for the image that you want to create, meaning that it's going to take primarily the colors and the composition of an image that you feed it. It can actually analyze it, break it down a little bit, and apply whatever prompt you give it to those colors and composition to create something new. For example, I've pulled up this image over here on MidJourney of a cyberpunk robot kneeling down in the middle of a post-apocalyptic destroyed city. It's holding some colorful balloons. Maybe I want this to be a clown in a post-apocalyptic city instead of a robot. How do we do this? Well, first and foremost, we need to make sure we're in the right spot here in MidJourney. I'm gonna make a whole new channel now so I can keep track of these a little bit better. Just gonna right click, create channel. We're gonna call this tutorial. That way everything's together from now on. So here, I'm gonna do /imagine. And what you do is you paste the direct URL of the image that you want to use as a reference before you type your prompt. So in this case, we have one pulled up here on MidJourney. We right click and we choose copy image link, not copy image link. And we paste it in there. And then we write out our prompt. Now, a tip, if the website you're pulling your image from gives you trouble, like it gives you a big gobbledygook string of letters that doesn't give you a proper file, or you have an image locally that you want to use as an image reference, you can actually just use MidJourney for this. And so I actually recommend, as part of the organization, figure out what category you want it to go in, but create a channel that's just reference images. And then you can copy paste the image itself. So right click, copy image, paste it directly into your MidJourney chat. And maybe even if you have any sort of descriptor, a prompt, just a general idea of what the image or the reason you're using it as a reference image, go ahead and paste that in there just so you have it for later. This is purely for reference for you. MidJourney doesn't see this directly, but now I can sit here and click the image, right click, copy link. And now we go back to our /imagine command. Paste that in there. Now we want to get rid of anything after the file extension. So .png is the image file extension. So I'm just gonna delete that. Space. And then we're gonna figure out our prompt. So we're gonna copy the prompt that this was given. Now, something important to note about reference images that I mentioned earlier in the video, you're somewhat beholden to the aspect ratio of your reference image. So, for example, we're going to paste our prompt in here. This image was generated with an aspect ratio of 9:16, so a vertical, portrait aspect ratio. If we try to generate an image with a different aspect ratio, it's going to have a problem. So I'm actually, for reference here, I'm going to copy the... Oh, we can't get the seed from it. I did not realize that. Huh, I guess we don't need it. So I'm going to we're going to ignore all this. I am going to use v5 because that's what they use. I'm going to use seed. We're going to use just a random number that we can keep consistent. So we're going to generate a new image based on this one. And we're going to go ahead and do what I'm going to show. So for the reference image, we want to replace this with a clown. So we're going to say a cyberpunk. I'm going to leave it as I'm going to say a glitch punk clown. And otherwise, we are using the reference image, we're using the rest of the prompt, the aspect ratio, all of that, and we're going to generate an image. But I'm also going to show you what it looks like when we try to change the aspect ratio. So I'm going to say 2:1 if I want like a cinematic aspect ratio. We're using the same seed, the same reference image, everything, and you're gonna see what happens. Okay, I said that, and in this case, we actually got a wider image. I showed earlier in the course when we used a reference image from one of my, it's the Skeleton King design here. If you, at least with variations, you absolutely end up with some wonky stuff. But a lot of the time, of course, my example that I pull up doesn't show up, but a lot of the time, you're going to get black bars in your image. So it's going to generate the aspect ratio that you want, but it's going to put black bars in it. In this case, it didn't. But for example, if I, you know, if I make a variation of one of these, let's say number 1, which has the balloons, but that's not really a clown. There's still no clown here. So we're going to say variation 1. We're going to say a glitchy clown blah 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 scary clown. We're gonna change that aspect ratio to say 4:3 for some classic retro design. Now interestingly, we have adhered very heavily to the original image prompt here, which we can discuss image weighting in a moment. So we have not given a whole lot of weight to the clown aspect yet. You can see number 4 here has a little bit of clown action going on, but it's still sticking to the cyberpunk robot aesthetic. And so we can tweak that with some image weighting, which we'll discuss in a moment. But you can see here, it is very much adhering to our reference image in terms of composition, the design language, and the colors. And so you have to do a lot of work or use what's called image weighting, which is basically telling it how much to focus on any particular element of your prompt, be it the text or the images themselves, to generate what you want it to see. There we go. Okay, so here's our example of our variation we generated changing the aspect ratio. So it was originally 2:1, and then we told it 4:3. And this one didn't do the black bars that our other example showed, which is very common. I see this all the time, where you get the black bars and then the stretched and squished aspect ratio, and it gets really funky. We got really lucky with this one. I don't know why, but it still is a little squished going from the 2:1 to the 4:3. So if you run into that with your reference images or your variations, whatever you're using as reference, causing that effect, you can just try to generate a version that has the correct aspect ratio that you want. So say, for example, we wanted that 4:3 aspect ratio. We could take our original reference image and just basically build something around it that isn't a solid color to show that that's what we want. So in, say, I'll show you a couple super quick ways, because a big message that I'm going to push throughout this little course video here is that the more prep work you do for your images in terms of, drawing the idea yourself, photo bashing it, whatever, the better result you're going to be able to get. So this is part 1 of this, but we're going to dive into it more in a second. So if I want a 4:3 image instead of the 9:16 one, then I'm going to make a new Photoshop document. I'm going to show you how to do it in Photoshop because they have fancy tools to make this better. I'm going to show you how to do it in a free app called Photopea that's on the web, where you don't need to pay for Photoshop, but it won't be as good. So if we want 4:3, we're going to say 1440 by 1080, which is a 4:3 aspect ratio. We'll talk about aspect ratios in a minute. I know we haven't gotten there yet. We're building up to it for why you should care. All right, so I've made a new document that's in a 4:3 aspect ratio. Resolution doesn't matter a ton. You don't want it to be too tiny that details get all crunchy, but MidJourney doesn't really process super high resolution images. We're going to paste our image in here, get it resized to fit our canvas, and center it. Then we're going to use the magic wand tool over here on the left, select our 2 blank areas, so hold shift to select the second one. Then we're just going to do edit, content aware fill. Photoshop has all these AI content aware tools that allow you to manipulate images a lot easier. That's part of what you're paying for with this crazy subscription compared to other applications. And for this much raw space being generated out of nothing, it's not going to look great, but it's going to keep it from just having solid bars, which will still influence MidJourney's decisions. So you can see a little preview over here. It's just taking like random details and trying to tile it. We can use this brush to kind of get rid of some that we don't want it to include. So maybe I don't want this texture off this bag included. I don't want the guy included. I don't want this thing on the ground included. But I'm fine with that background included. And I don't want the strings of the balloons. So otherwise that should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And it's going to generate a new layer with those sides on it. Now it's just tiled texture of this stuff. Again, it is not the best. What we can do, however, is perhaps crop a little bit. So we're going to keep our ratio. We're going to crop in on the balloons just a little bit. Crop in on the ground a little bit so we have less space taken up by this just raw repeating texture. And then I'm maybe gonna make a new layer, use our clone stamp tool over here, which can clone parts of the image. Make my cursor bigger, hold Alt to take a sample, and just kind of, it's not doing anything at all. Hold Alt. Oh, because I'm not sampling the correct layer. Hold Alt over here, and draw in some of that texture back. Okay, make sure at the top, sample current and below layers, so you don't have to keep switching layers. Don't want the balloons to repeat too much. You know, fill in some of that building. This looks like absolute garbage. Like, I understand that. It's not supposed to look like a whole lot. It's just supposed to not tell MidJourney to, like, give you solid bars. It's still supposed to look like something of a destroyed city. And you could even photo bash, which we'll talk about later in the course. But we can just pull up a city. Like something like this. Copy this image. Paste it in here. It's from a video game or something probably. And then I put it underneath our guy. Yeah, we can use something like that, where we just have that city in there as a means of giving that information to MidJourney. We'll just export this as a quick PNG. I'll just make a scrap folder, because we don't need this for anything. Cyberpunk robot destroyed city. We'll talk more and more and more about how to get better results from this in the future. But that's how you would make that image in Photoshop. In a free application, if you don't have access to Photoshop, photop.com. This is basically like a web-hosted Photoshop that is completely free. And so once again, we take our, we're gonna make a new project. Do they have a 4:3? They don't by default, so 1440. Obviously, whatever aspect ratio resolution you were targeting. Create. We're gonna copy in our original image. Controls are going to be a little different since it's Control T is to make a tab. We're just going to make it fit here. Align it. And then same thing with that destroyed city image. Copy image. And we're just going to put it behind our guy. And file. Export as PNG. So once again, we go into our Discord for our reference images. We drag in our new crappily photo bashed image here. Upload it. Now we copy link. And now we can use this to generate a 4:3 version. So that's how you would handle that. Use that as your image source instead of the original. So to help get some of our clown back, we can actually use multiple image sources in our prompt. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull up our prompt here. I'm going to hit Control Z. Not working anymore. All right, we're just going to copy paste our original prompt here. /imagine. And once you have used an image reference, it gives you this s.mj.run URL. You can just use that moving forward for your image references. You don't have to copy the original link over and over. So I am going to copy the image link for this second clown image. And I also pulled up another clown image that we're going to use as well. Both of them are holding balloons. So this is going to help kind of identify that we want a clown here. And I'm going to leave it at the same 9:16 aspect ratio of the original image. So now we have our original inspiration image, which is the robot holding the balloons that we wanted to replace with a clown. We have our prompt where we have modified it to specify a clown instead of a robot. And then we have two more reference images thrown in at the front of specifically, you know, kind of creepy looking clowns holding balloons kind of in the fashion that we want. Send that off. You can see here, whenever you use image references now, when you fire off the command at first, it'll just show those in the preview, but they'll go away once it starts rendering the image. Now you can see, now that we have given it sources for what for the clown style we're going for, we get exactly what we want. We get a creepy looking glitchy clown holding balloons in the middle of this destroyed cyberpunk post-apocalyptic city. That's the power of image references. Reference images. However you want to say it. It's really cool and really powerful, and we're going to keep using it. But we need to talk some more about aspect ratios, since we covered this whole thing with aspect ratios. Aspect ratio is the ratio of width to height of your image, of video, or whatever. Common aspect ratios include 16:9 for a standard computer monitor or TV, 9:16 for a standard, phone screen. You've got 21:9 for ultra-wide monitors like I'm using now. This video itself is in 2:1 or 18:9. There's 4:3 for old, CRT video. Film photography and normal still photos from a, real mirrorless or DSLR camera are usually taken in 3:2, or if you flip that vertically, 2:3. I'll have some shown on screen. These you can use to generate, images for different purposes for MidJourney. Because if we took the standard square output of something we have worked with MidJourney before, let me find an example here. If we take the standard square output of, say, this prompt we just fired off, if we just do /imagine and delete any aspect ratio bits, it's going to give us a square image, which is a 1:1 aspect ratio. This is perfect for posting to Twitter, to Instagram, social media platforms. But if we want to use it for a poster, for a video, for a thumbnail, for wallpapers, anything like that, it's not going to be super useful, because then we're going to have to crop in to get the aspect ratio that we want, or stretch it, which is going to look horrible. And usually, cropping and things like that won't always be an option because of the composition of the frame. So that is one reason you might want to use different aspect ratios, is you want to generate something that looks more like you want. So for example, for like shirt designs, I would do something taller, because usually they're printed tall in front of the shirt. I'll show you some examples of some shirts I've had printed with my glitch art and my AI art that I have in physical form. It's pretty cool. For certain prints, I want something that's like super cinematic and widescreen for like a poster print. So I want a wider aspect ratio. Same thing with posters. I had the whole, if you haven't seen it, I did a whole project of printing MidJourney generated images as posters in like super high fidelity and super big size, and it turned out great. And you can see some of these here. These are all generated in a very tall aspect ratio, because that is the size of the poster that I wanted to generate. It is 13:19, which is the size of the paper that my printer accepts. So I messed with that size. In this case, we do still get basically the same image that we want. And so we could crop this if we needed a vertical crop for it, but that won't always be the case. Also, the aspect ratio heavily contributes to the composition cues that MidJourney takes for certain compositions. So if we go back to our DMs with the MidJourney bot and take a look at the images we were trying to generate before, based on that little swirly library one, if I pull up the original image that we were referencing, it is a very tall aspect ratio image. It is generated in, I think, 9:16. But it's very tall, which affects the composition, because then we get these really tall buildings, warping up into the sky. We have this spiraling, staired path going through the city. We have a lot of compositional clues, because MidJourney tries to fill out the frame. And one of the big issues MidJourney used to struggle with is if you did a taller aspect ratio and talked about a person, it didn't really know what to do with the rest of a taller frame. And so it would often duplicate the person's head or something to fill in that space, because MidJourney is trying to use the frame that you tell it to fill in that space. So you can see here, when we started generating just basic 1:1 images, that composition changed a little bit. We either got a wider angle view if there's a person involved that has a lot more stuff kind of filling in this horizontal space, or we got like a big warped bubbled view, or we just got more of a basic scene versus this tall spiraling image that the taller aspect ratio did. So to use aspect ratio in the first place, it is one of the parameters that you add at the end of a prompt. So with these prompts, we were doing --AR space 9:16 to get that taller aspect ratio. So you can do pretty much any of the aspect ratios that you want, within reason. Like, you will find some that are completely random numbers. But we can pull up another reference image just to keep building on what we were doing before. I found some pretty cool images on the community feed that we might want to reference. So here's this one. Maybe I want this one to be a little taller. So we're going to copy the full prompt or full command. We're going to do /imagine. We're going to paste that in there. I'm going to take off the quality parameter because we're not talking about that right now, and it will make it take longer. But you can see here it has an aspect ratio of 8:11, which was, you know, roughly be like a standard letter piece of paper, 8.5:11. So that is the ratio that they went with. But we could generate something like, do we want it to be taller or wider? We kind of want it to be taller, maybe get some more of that view in there. So maybe I want to go for my poster aspect ratio. So if we want to do that, I love that this one has no people in it, and there was definitely a person in that prompt. But you type in your prompt. So we want city landscape, art germ, HD night. Very vague prompt overall. But then we want --AR 13:19 to make a poster that we would print on my 13:19 paper for my Canon Pixma whatever printer. That is all you have to do for aspect ratios. And then it's going to give you 4 images that are as close as possible to that aspect ratio. Again, depending on whether MidJourney can compose for it or not, and the reference images you use, you may still end up with some black bars here or there. I have had plenty of images where there's like a frame in it or something like that because it didn't really know how to make use of all that space and still wanted to give me the ratio. Okay, as you can see here, we've taken that original image prompt and generated something similar with that taller aspect ratio. Now, because we took off the no people parameter, we have a couple that primarily feature people, but we also have a couple bigger ones that might have a person in it, but is closer to that mostly cityscape focus. Now, these are a little bit more hand-drawn-y than the original piece looked. It had a little bit more of a painterly design. But if I went in and used that original image as an image prompt with the same otherwise prompt, we're getting images that are a lot closer to that style while being this taller aspect ratio that I might want to print on a poster. Like this would be a pretty cool poster composition with like some sort of quote here or something like that. This one's a little bit more cropped in, focused on the person, but it's still a pretty cute little image there. We got like the downtown cityscape in the background. We've got the bustling town in the foreground or the midground. This one has the person standing on the roof, which I just thought was kind of goofy. And same with this one. That person is clearly just floating somewhere rather than being behind the balcony. But otherwise, pretty cool looking images. And we can do all that with the power of aspect ratio and, you know, control it however. This also brings us to a good time to talk about your default settings for MidJourney. Because if you're regularly generating something in a particular way, you can set some of that as defaults within MidJourney, so you don't have to type it. Remember to type these little parameters every time. So to access these in any channel where you have the MidJourney bot accessible or in DMs with it, you can just type /settings and hit enter. And it brings up all these buttons. Don't get overwhelmed. There's a lot of buttons here, but a lot of them are just like basic stuff. So you have the different MidJourney versions that you default to. I'm going to switch mine to defaulting to V5 now. We're going to talk about the different versions, but effectively every 6 months or so, the MidJourney team, organization, whatever, you know, has a new version of their image generation algorithm that does things better or differently. And you can start using different ones. There's also the different versions of NijiJourney, which is the anime version of MidJourney. So you can choose those instead of the default MidJourney one. You have one to enable just the test, whatever experiments they may have going on right now. You can default to that instead of the normal MidJourney one. They also have a test photo one. I don't know that these are actually used at the moment. We're gonna try the same prompt here. AR 13:19, and you can see here it fires off that command with those extra parameters. So yeah, the test and the test photo right now are not in use, so it will just give me an error. So we need to set that back to V5. But whenever they do new experiments for their new algorithms or whatever for their image models, you can turn those on to just use it by default. Then you have quality. So there is such a thing in MidJourney. This is typically with like Stable Diffusion would be called like scale or the CFG. You can basically tell MidJourney how long to think about the image to generate it. And so you can do high quality, which is going to be slower, half quality, which is going to be faster, and the normal quality. So it uses less of your credits and things like that you're paying for with MidJourney, but then affects the quality of the final result that you can get. And I think quality can go all the way up to like 5 or something at this point. The default buttons for it just give you 0.5, 1, and 2. And so I often keep quality 2 as my default, just because I like, you know, getting the highest quality renders and ideas out there. But it does mean using up more of your credits, costing you more money, and so on. Then there's stylization. You can control how much MidJourney stylizes your image based on its own, you know, creativity, so to speak. It's a machine. It doesn't have creativity, but you know what I mean. Like they can inject their own stuff into it. And so by default, I believe everyone's set to medium, which means it's going to adhere more to your prompts rather than trying to get away from it. But you can set it all the way up to very high, which is going to go super stylized for everything that you do. So for example, I'm going to turn this on and we're going to regenerate this whole exact prompt that we just did for these taller images here. /imagine. And it doesn't matter if you copy a prompt from like the website or your own stuff that already has these in here. It'll duplicate them, but it won't affect anything. So now we're generating the same image in the same aspect ratio with the same reference image, but with a quality of 2 and a stylization of 750, which is what it deems to be very high. We're gonna set it back to medium. At any time, if you get freaked out, if you think you messed things up, you don't like where your settings are at, there is a reset settings button, so I can show you what these defaults are. Reset settings. MidJourney V4, base quality, medium style, and then it doesn't change this bottom row at all. So I'm gonna set it back to high quality and V5, and then it shows you what your suffixes are here. Now you may have seen on some of my prompts, there's a --up beta I was using. This controls the upscaler algorithm that it used for the older MidJourney models. Doesn't really apply to the modern ones, so don't even worry about it. Then you have public and stealth mode. As a paying subscriber, I don't know if you need the higher tier or not. You can enable stealth mode, which means they're not displayed on your public profile page on the MidJourney website, as I showed you before. So if I go home, you can see my recent generations. But if someone else is looking at my profile, you're only going to see the ones I've marked as public. And so you can control that here. You can enable a remix mode, and that brings up the buttons I showed you here, where if you make a variation either on an individual image or with the V1 through V4 buttons, it gives you the prompt window back. Instead of just firing off that command again to generate 4 new images, it gives you the prompt window back so you can make modifications within that variation command, which is really handy. Allows you to remix the image. And then you have fast versus relax mode. Paying users, again, can use relax mode, which generates your images more slowly, but uses up less or no credits at all. I think, yeah, you run out, you're paying for fast credits, and then when you run out of fast credits, you're kicked over to relax mode, and you get unlimited relax credits. You're just a lower priority under everyone else, so it takes longer. But it is a great way to go if you use the permutations feature to generate like bulk images while you're sleeping, which we'll talk about in a bit. Or if you're not in a rush, you're just kind of doing this on the side while you're doing your work or watching a video or something. You don't need to spit images back to you very quickly. You can toggle on relax mode to do things a little more slowly and save you some credits. So here we have taken twice as long to generate the quality 2 and stylization of 750. And frankly, we got basically the same thing. Like I see, you can see the quality improvement, but stylization wasn't super heavy over this one. So those are your settings for the defaults that you can set for your suffix. So you can also come in here. I'm going to set these back. I was experimenting with something. You can do /suffix, and it's going to say prefer suffix. And then on top of your default settings here, you can do --AR and then say you always generate just standard widescreen images for YouTube thumbnails. You can add aspect ratio 16:9. So now any image you generate, if we do /settings again, you can see here, we can toggle these on. You know, annoyingly, if you do the /prefer suffix, you have to toggle your settings back. But now we can combine that AR 16:9 for a widescreen aspect ratio with the V5 preference and the high quality preference. And every prompt we send out by default will have these attached to it. So now if I do /imagine cyberpunk dog saving the galaxy and hit enter, I typed no parameters, but it automatically filled in an aspect ratio of 16:9, version 5, and quality of 2 for me. So that's another way you can manipulate your settings there. Now you can do /prefer suffix and then just leave it blank, and it's going to get rid of those, and then you can go back to your settings and set those up. I'm going to leave base quality on for now since we are trying to move a little quickly for this tutorial here. I do wish they would just add all of the other options here in the settings menu, or like a custom field or something, so you didn't have to do this, because there's a lot of different parameters you can manipulate, but whatever. And just for fun, here's our cyberpunk dog saving the galaxy. These are awesome. I love them. Speaking of parameters, we're gonna start talking about some more of those. So first and foremost, we're gonna cover tile. MidJourney can generate tileable, repeatable patterns that you can then just scale infinitely. This is useful for making like the digital paper patterns for Etsy, for backgrounds, for animated backgrounds that you want to loop infinitely. There are lots of uses for it. And so we just do our normal /imagine command. We'll say cyberpunk UI elements. No, we're gonna say CRT scanned wireframe UI elements, shapes and icons, pattern of UI icons, and then you want -- tile as your parameter to make a tileable image. And these days, 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure you're gonna get one that's perfectly seamless for a seamless pattern. Every once in a while, you're gonna get something that isn't. And something to keep in mind is if you use some sort of post upscaler in Photoshop, in an AI upscaler like Gigapixel or something, those have a chance of breaking the seamless pattern capabilities of whatever image that you got, because it's going to tweak the little, the small details on the edges, and it's not going to be seamless anymore. I've seen people run into this, but realistically, you don't need to upscale them if you're just making a pattern, because the default size you're going to get out of it is fine, and you're tiling it anyway. Tiling just means, repeating it in all directions. So it should be fine. Now, I wouldn't mess with aspect ratios much for tiles, because you kind of want the square to be easily repeatable. I can already tell these are not going to look how I want. Trying to get tiny little UI elements is pretty difficult out of MidJourney sometimes, but we can come in here and HUD UI. We can just try to find an example of someone making icons. These are pretty cool HUDs, but these are not what I'm looking for. UI icons? There we go. You can see lots of people have just made icon packs with these, and that's pretty sick. We'll talk about logo design a little bit in the future. Wireframe icons. Yeah, it really struggles with the wireframe design. I guess I shouldn't try to focus on that. Here we go. If we want something like this would be a boring pattern, but you get the idea. Yeah, like these, I guess they'd kind of make decent patterns. Yeah, let's just go with something like more default. Let's say, imagine, I'm gonna say, what are we coming up on holiday-wise? 4th of July isn't really, icons for that aren't, like, it would just be fireworks. That would be kind of weird. So we'll just say, we'll just do Christmas. Cutesy, kawaii icons of Christmas symbols, iconography. Adorable Christmas pattern design. Family friendly, comforting -- tile. It does great with the like cutesy Pixar sticker style. All right, here we go. These look like they'd be perfect for wrapping paper. Some of them are a little goofy, like they're missing a face or something, so you might want to fill those in yourself if, in a photo editor, but some of these are pretty adorable. And for some uses, you'd never really notice anyway. I like number 4 the most, so we're going to splice out number 4. I like number 1 too. I'm going to go in and click that just for fun. With the version 5 model, upscaling is pretty much instant because it already generates these. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to go with number 4. Again, I realize there's some errors. You could try to fix them yourself or just keep working on your prompt. For the sake of the tutorial, we're just going to rush to it. I'm going to save out this image once it loads here. Or maybe I'll just click the button anyway. There we go. So now I'm going to post a link to the description in the, a link in the description to this tile seamless texture checker, which allows you to check your patterns to see if they're seamless. And so we can come over here, drag our image on, and then you can zoom in and out and see if you see any seams. It looks like it perfectly, tiles for me, and we can zoom all the way in here. It looks fine. I think for wrapping paper, it'd be pretty great. But as a demo, I wanted to show you, if we run it through something like Gigapixel to upscale it, if you wanted, if you're trying to brute force it to be higher resolution, which I don't entirely recommend. I'm not even happy with the results of that. But let's just say we do that and we export it. Okay, we have upscaled it. So now if we check the upscaled version with the tile checker, zoom back out a little bit. This one actually still looks pretty okay. I have seen people, we also don't have a ton of details on the borders of the tiles. If you have a bunch of like small details on the borders of the tiles, you're gonna start seeing a little bit of a seam. I've seen a lot of people complain about it, and I've seen it myself. With this one, we ended up okay. It holds up a little better under scrutiny, although the finer details when you print it may not look as good, but this one worked out. But a lot of the little details with tiling will be kind of broken by upscaling. All right, we have mastered a lot of the standard MidJourney prompt generation. By now you have the ability to create images in any, size and shape that you would like. You have the ability to make patterns. You have the ability to use and make your own reference images to build out, ideally, the exact image that you want. There's still some research you can do on details, and we'll talk more about it. But I want to take a break from the prompt crafting again to talk about seeds. This will help you take you to that next step. Seeds are, again, if you missed it, they are effectively a reference to the noise pattern that is used to generate your image. So again, AI art is generated by taking what's called a Gaussian noise pattern, which just looks like this, just raw noise, and trying to find the best possible route to recreate the subject, the style, the composition that you have given in your prompt to produce the image that you want. And it uses machine learning training to tell itself, or for them to tell it when it does a good job and when it produces what you want, so it can continue to make better and better results. And each time it starts with a new noise pattern, but you can control that and tell it to start with the same noise pattern each time. Now, used to, either by finding a image in the MidJourney feed here and reacting to it with the envelope emoji and having the bot DM you the job ID and things like that, or by going to MidJourney's website and clicking the copy button. You used to be able to get the seed for every image generated by MidJourney, which made it super nice to try to build something off of what someone else had done, to try to get some consistent results, to learn about how your prompt changes affect the result. Unfortunately, they have removed this for other people's images. And I kind of get why, in terms of like not stealing other people's images, but given how MidJourney works and sources its data, I can't say that's the most logical of takes to have, but you can still do this for your own images. So if you go to your homepage on the website, you can find any image you have generated, and you can get the seed for it. So we can take, for example, this neon rain one. We can click the 3 dots, and as usual, we can copy the command, the prompt, the job ID, but we can also copy this seed. Now you can also get this from your images you have already generated here in Discord by just navigating to where they are on the web. So I can, well, this one we haven't been giving a web button because we haven't upscaled yet, so we can do the envelope emoji on it. And then the MidJourney bot is going to give us that information, including the seed that it used for the grid itself, which is really powerful. So we are going to take this seed, and now we can use this in our prompts to better kind of target what we were doing with this. So let's say we really like the base ideas it comes up with for this cyberpunk dog, but we want to tweak it some more. But every time you send a new prompt, even with variations, it doesn't always use the same seed. Most of the time when you send prompt, I think variations sometimes do, but every time you send a prompt, it's going to use a new seed unless you tell it to use the same seed. So say we really like version 4 here, or this image 4. We just want to tweak it a little bit. We're going to say, make a variation of V4, and I have remix turned on for this. Otherwise, you'd have to upscale it and then click the variation button. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if you click upscale, then you can click make variations. Otherwise, if you have remix turned on in your settings, as I just showed you, we can click V4 here. Now, since I want to make a variation of it, I'm actually going to upscale it this way so I can use that as the image source. So I'm going to say make variation. I'm going to do -- seed and paste that in there. But I also want to use this as the image source, as an image reference. So I'm going to paste my seed here so I have it. I'm going to right click, copy link. Now I'm going to say make variation. Paste that in there. Get rid of anything after the file extension. And now we want -- seed, and I can't copy it without closing our prompt. So I'm going to say -- seed space and then the number. So 18027088178. But now we want to tweak our prompt a little bit so we can continue iterating and see how our changes affect this. And so I can say cyberpunk dog saving the galaxy. Maybe I want to say, instead of the goggles, dog is wearing a VR headset with googly eyes on the VR headset. Now it's using the same seed it used to generate this image. It's using this image as the reference for the composition and colors. And we're just trying to add in that VR headset element instead of the goggles. So it's going to take all of that information and give us something new, but it's based on the same noise pattern that it uses here. So this is a way to more consistently iterate fine details. That's kind of what I've been building up to over this course, is I can show you the prompt manipulation, I can show you the image references, but then now we add in that seed element so you can just finely tune your prompt to continue generating something different each time. And that is the AI art generation process as the user of just tweaking more and more of those parameters to try to get what you want. You can see here already, it's not done yet, but it's not doing a VR headset. Because of the image prompt here, it is sticking to those goggles. So again, we go to our old classic photo bashing technique. This time I'm going to use Affinity Photo, which I've talked about the Affinity suite on my channel before. I have a video on the version 2 linked in the description. It is a much more affordable alternative to Adobe image editing software, and they have a much better business model in terms of buying once and not subscribing, and it's super affordable. So I'm going to make an image. We're going to make it 1920 by 1080. That's fine. We're going to take our original reference image here, paste it in. That gave me text, but it also gave me the size of the image. That is super weird. There we go. We don't care about the text. We just want the image. We'll hide that text layer. And now we need to find an image of a VR headset. So I'll just go to classic, either Yandex image search or Google image search. And we want it facing the same direction or to manipulate it in that direction. Thankfully, that's the cliche pose that everyone uses anyway. If you're not comfortable with like ripping images from Google Images, even though we're not using this in our final product, it's just to, you know, build a reference image like you'd send to any artist, you can use a stock library. So I am subscribed to Envato Elements. They are not a sponsor, but I do have an affiliate link with them. If you want to subscribe, it's just a subscription service to get tons of stock assets I use in almost every project I do, video or image-wise. I'll have an affiliate link in the description that will give a small kickback. It's, for what it is, for like a year subscription, it's super affordable, but we can just search VR headset, go in here to the photos. That photo is about what we want. So I can go ahead and just license that, download it, whatever, that's fine. Find it, drag it into our Affinity comp here. If you want Affinity photo tutorials to do some of these basics, let me know. They're not going to perform as well, but I would be happy to show you all these basics. It's a little out of the scope of a video specifically about AI art, but I can walk you through some of the basics. So I'm just resizing my image so that the headset fits over to, oh gosh, darn it. All right, can I lock? Yeah, I can lock the dog. We don't need to manipulate the dog anymore, so that layer is locked. I don't like how Affinity's like layer selection and stuff works compared to Photoshop. There's a lot I don't like about Affinity, having used Photoshop for a very long time, but I make it work. All right, so to see where we want the mask to go, we're gonna lower the layer opacity so we see a blend of them, so we can line it up about where we want. That is about perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a layer mask that basically just hides everything except for the VR headset. So I'm gonna click this button right here, which creates a layer mask. We are going to use the brush, and I don't have my tablet plugged in, so we'll do this on the mouse. We need the black. So with a layer mask, white shows through, black hides. And so we want to use the black brush. That is the selection brush. That is not the paint brush. We want to use the black brush to hide this. And this is basically erasing, but the advantage of using a layer mask instead of erasing is that you can more easily refine it and continue like showing and hiding over time versus having to just Control-Z a bunch to undo your erase. It's a much finer, more professional way to handle this that makes your life a lot easier in the long run. So we're just masking away the underlying, or this overlay layer here to where we just have the VR headset. We don't want the guy, we don't want the background. We want the headset over top the snoof. He's a good boy, he's saving the galaxy, but he needs to be doing so in a VR headset. I'm trying to decide if I want the ear cuffs or not. So just as an example, since I did talk about this, say I just accidentally drug through there. Obviously I can Control-Z. Let's say I'm already making other adjustments. I can hit X and swap the colors from black to white, and now white, painting white on, shows that back through. Like I said, just makes your life a little easier to refine these selections. Once you use this workflow a bunch, you get used to the like back and forth of it. It makes things so much easier. So there we have masked on the VR headset. So that's generally what we're going for, but we also want the googly eyes on there. And instead of just, since we're already doing all of this, instead of just hoping MidJourney comes up with the googly eyes, we could also pull up an image of some googly eyes. So this I am going to use Google Images for just because it's easier. All right, we're just going to use this one. Again, this is a reference image. I'm not making something out of it. Oh, and this one did actually have transparency, even though when I dragged it, it didn't look like it. All right, so we're going to do a little something like this. There we go. So obviously this is not the final image that we want overall because it's just a poorly done Photoshop. And we could spend the time to, or Affinity edit, I guess, not Photoshop. We could spend the time to color grade it and all of that. We don't really need that. It's fine as is. We're going to export as a PNG. Again, to our scrap folder we made before, which I recommend keeping in your organization. We're going to say cyberpunk dog VR googly eyes. Let that save out. We're going to go to our reference images Discord channel. We're going to drag that one in. Copy image link. And we're going to do the same thing we did just a second ago with that remix. So now that we've made that image, we can click make variations again. Paste in that image link. Into our modified prompt. Cyberpunk dog, comma, dog is wearing a VR headset with googly eyes on the VR headset, saving the galaxy. We may need to put that part at the end, but then we still do -- seed 180-270-8178 and submit. Okay, anytime I try to make a variance, I've done this like a million times. Anytime I try to make a variation on the upscale, it sticks too closely to those original goggles, even with our modified image. So what I would do in this case is try it on the V4 itself. So we're also going to try dog is wearing a VR headset with googly eyes. -- seed 180-270-8178. Try it on that, and otherwise just try the original prompt itself without that original variation at all specified. So we just copy what we typed without remixing at all. And we'll try that too. /imagine. So we have a reference image, we have the original prompt that we have modified to include the VR headset. Because you see this one is still trying to stick to those goggles. Whereas if we feed it something new, still with the same seed, but without that original reference of the goggles at all, we should get closer. This is all about experimentation. I've had to do this way too many times to try to get rid of those goggles. It's what the process is all about. Yeah, still those damn goggles with the variation. Here is our from scratch generation happening, and you can see here, it's already doing better. We still got a goggly look to it. I think it's because the eyes on the VR headset kind of look like goggle bits, but we're getting closer. Maybe if we took the eyes off entirely, it would be fine. Or perhaps we do it all without a seed. Like this also shows the power of sticking to the same seed. Maybe that just adheres too strongly to that original design, because if we scroll back up to that original image, they all have goggles on, except for that one, but they all have goggles on. That one does get closer. Like that one is definitely more of a VR headset. So this time, if we just generate entirely without the seed, we'll compare, because this one still sticks to that original design. These look awesome. Like that fourth one is incredible. Second one looks a lot more like a VR headset. The third one looks like some sort of combat mech headset. But they're all sticking to that original look that we had here. So if we generate a new one without the seed, we can compare to the exact same prompt with the seed. Clearly MidJourney has no clue what to do with googly eyes. But these are the cyberpunk dogs wearing something that looks a lot more like a VR headset now. So we're making a lot of progress here. So you can see here, if we use the seed, it tries to adhere to goggles a little more. Without it, we get a lot more of a headset design. So that's the power of seeds. I honestly don't use them a ton, but if you are trying to iterate minute details, you're gonna want to stick with them. If you don't want to manipulate fine details and stick with your original path, and you want MidJourney to make a lot of those decisions for you to help kind of find your way, that is where the Stylize and the chaos parameters come in. So thus far, we've been building up your workflow of trying to like hone in on a specific image idea that you may have. What if you wanted to add randomness to it, to have it make those decisions for you? Well, you can use that Stylize and chaos parameter. So we're gonna do imagine. We're gonna paste in our prompt without the seed, but this time we're gonna do, I'm gonna take off the quality too, because I want it to go quicker. We're gonna do --s, which is Stylize. You could also just do style. And then you can go with, at least with version 5, you can go from 0 to 1,000. And as we showed in the settings part, the default is gonna be somewhere around 500 already for the medium stylization. It might be around 250. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's already doing some. But you can inject some more in there. So we can say --s. And actually, we are going to use a seed here so that we can continue building upon this image. So we're basing it on this generation. We're using the same seed, the same prompt, same reference image, all of that. But we're gonna add in a stylization, just full fat 1,000. And then we're gonna do the same thing. And we're gonna do 750. And we're gonna do the same thing. And we're gonna do 200. And we're gonna do the same thing and do 0. We're gonna let all those process. Okay, now we can watch the progression. A 0 stylization has a very MidJourney style, as people often refer to it. So it's lacking in a lot of the detail. It still has some photorealism, but like it's not doing a whole lot. It's just kind of some elements slapped together. They still look kind of neat. It's kind of what you'd get out of DALL-E or Adobe Firefly or something, where they haven't trained its own style and trained on itself a whole lot yet. That's with 0 stylization at all. With 200 stylization, we're already close to our original prompt, which makes me think maybe 200, 250 is the medium option by default. Because this very much looks like our previous generation that we had. We get a lot more detail on the dog, we get more stylization of the headsets, we get some background elements coming in, some weird particles on this one. Weird choice, but it did it. Then looking at 750, we get a lot more weird designs in the headsets. This dog's wearing headphones instead of a VR headset, but its eyes are really bulgy. We get some more of that kind of injected in there. It's a little more obvious with stuff with backgrounds, but I think looking at these smaller details are interesting. You get to see there's just more weirdness to it as it goes, because it's trying to like really hone in on whatever cyberpunk style. And then 1000 mostly kind of just looks like 750. However, there are some easy to reference resources with regards to seeing direct differences of the impact of stylization and chaos and things like that, which we'll talk about after we talk about what chaos is. So that was Stylize, where it just tries to, you know, we start with a very kind of plain looking thing, develop into more of a stylized look over time. Chaos adds in randomness. So let's say we really like 750. We like everything we have here. We're going to copy this prompt as we had before. Same seed, same everything. We still have the 750 Stylize, but this time we want to add chaos. Chaos, again, it's just randomness. It's basically giving MidJourney more leeway to vary away from your prompt to do something that it thinks might be good, just based on wherever it ends up. Chaos is basically a percentage from 0 to 100. So again, I'm going to fire off the same set of jobs here. All right, so chaos of 0 is of course what we just generated the first time. The image looks basically identical to what we had before. So that's a good starting point for reference. And then moving up to a chaos level of 25, you can see here the dog types start changing. We start getting some different elements. We start getting some black bars on some certain images, which is frustrating because that stops adhering to your composition desires or like references as much. The goggles on this dog just go absolutely wild. And that's only with a 25% chaos level. With 75, things are pretty much already out the window. We get this really, I'm in love with number 3 here. The style on this is incredible with the gradient on the goggles. I wish it aligned the same, but I could probably tweak that in post. This one, again, wrong aspect ratio. This one's just a complete, that looks like a rugby helmet. We get some wild stuff. And then full 100% chaos is very similar, but just, you probably get the primary subject you asked for or your image reference has, but very little else. That is what chaos does. Like, it is wild. And if you want to go real crazy with like MidJourney prompts, just come up with something vague and then use max stylization and chaos. So this works best on V4. I'm going to demo it here on V5. V5 tends to be a little bit more literal and like hardcore attending to the words you say, whereas V4 and older tend to get a little more abstract, but we're going to try to push V5 to be more abstract. So we're going to say the desperation when sleep just won't start. Something edgy, I guess. Dash dash AR 2:1 for something super cinematic. Dash dash S for stylize. We'll even say stylize. 1000 dash dash chaos 100. You can use dash dash S or stylize for the stylization percentage. Okay, for fun, I went ahead and did a V5 and a V4 one. So with V4, you get something a little more abstract, a little less photorealistic, more in that MidJourney style, but it just goes crazy. It just takes whatever it thinks from your words and does something. So you've got that sense of desperation and a sense of sleep. That kid's yawning. That one's just pouting on what is a very sad excuse for a bed. That person's just really sad in the middle of their bed. Same with that one. Both of them are just like coming out of the middle of their bed somehow with their torso. And then that person's sleeping up against the wall, but just very like, you know, super crazy. And then V5 defaults to a very photorealistic style. And so we've got two people trying to sleep on a pillow, which makes sense. That guy looks sad. She looks sad, pondering the time because it's, I guess, 5:25 a.m. and she's still not sleeping. And then that one's just a clock outside, producing its own spotlight, because why not? You can go crazy with like super abstract prompts and things like that. Like if we just do a single word. But you can also use these with the permutations feature, which allows you to generate a bunch of different images at once from your prompts to kind of find a path to go down as a way of like finding your inspiration or finding the next step for what you need to do. We'll be getting there in a little bit. Permutations is a really awesome feature. All right, now this one took forever to generate for some reason, but I just fed it one word, wonderful, with a max stylize and max chaos rating, and it gave 4 completely different images. We got a random anime character, which I guess it might be wonderfully drawn, but I don't know why it would invoke the emotion of wonderful, or the feeling of wonderful, the adjective of it. You've got a happy couple, which I guess, yeah, checks out. Dude kind of looks like, I don't remember his name. There's an actor that dude kind of looks like. There's a cute little puppy drawing. I guess that's wonderful. And then like a swirly vortex, which could be like a wonderful, like wonder of the world kind of thing. But you see the complete randomness you can get with this kind of thing. But maybe you're just looking for something to do and you just feed it a single feeling or word. You see what it comes up with and then you start iterating from there. And you know, maybe I want to do V4 and I want to be like wonderful vortex of emotions in hyperspace. And at that point, you could turn down the chaos in the stylize if you want, or you could just still let it kind of do its own thing. And probably take forever to generate when you're on the max setting like this. Oh, it's actually generating something pretty similar. Very cool. Now, up to this point, I have given you the understanding, or helped you build the understanding, I guess, to build your own prompts, to reference your own images, to even start photo bashing your own reference images, to create the images that you want. But there are other resources that can help you fine-tune this to the nth degree, because there are so many different styles and graphical elements and ideas that you can incorporate into your prompts that you're never going to think of, because most of them are like made-up words and things you would have never thought of. But there are resources to figure it out. The first one I'm going to point you to is this ebook called the AI Art Master Guide. Someone reached out to me about this and I checked it out, and it's actually really handy. This one costs money, a fair bit of change, but if you want something that's like an all-in-one easy to reference resource, as a lot of people have asked me to make, and I frankly just don't have the time for right now, this is a really great resource that they're going to keep updating over time for any changes to MidJourney and things like that. Both to get started with MidJourney itself, but also to reference some styles, which is mainly what I feel are the like main advantages here. Because there's all of these punk and core and wave and those kinds of like style things that you'd never think of. And so there's the obvious one like synthwave, cyberpunk, but then there's like forest core, hiking punk, those kinds of things. So this one has sword punk as a city, light core, neon punk, cloud punk, Like, so many of these weird combinations of things are styles that MidJourney has found and scraped and identified. Goth punk city, deathcore, doodlecore. Like, this looks incredible. I would have never thought to include any of these words because they're not styles that I reference on my own. Obviously, some amount of art studying and knowledge and, you know, the study of art styles and all of that is going to benefit your ability to manipulate an AI art generator. But some of it is just knowing these like niche cultural things to achieve the styles that you want. And so it has libraries with comparison cubes of all the different styles and things you could reference to help better inform you. And this is what I was talking about before, of having something that more cleanly kind of shows you the differences here. This is a really valuable resource, in my opinion. Like, look at Space Solar Punk. Like, that looks incredible. So it has stuff like that. It's got advanced, like, just general prompting tips, things like that. Like I said, this one costs a little bit of money. I will have an affiliate link in the description that gives me a small kickback just so you can check it out for yourself. Like I said, it's really, really powerful. But there are some free resources you can use too. I'm not going to shy away from them. The first one is midlibrary.io, which has tons of different, like, styles, film types you can references, photographers and artists if you want to go with names. Again, I recommend sticking away from it a little bit, but it has tons of stuff baked in here and you can just search for it. So like, I can search for glitch. What kind of glitch art stuff do we have? Glitch art. We've got, oh, there's like blog posts about it and stories and things like that. But if we just want to look at genres and art movements, we've got glitch art in V5 and V4 and NijiJourney. And then it starts pulling up some sort of similar reference ones. I would say that a lot of the styles and style differences are going to, this one won't have as much as the PDF, but it does have some cool stuff. You know, it depends on, with all of these, it's going to depend on what style direction you're going in, because plenty of people focus on like specific things. But this one has tons of, you know, 80s fashion, different style of paintings and all the stuff. So this one is like super useful in that regard of seeing comparisons of different styles that you might want to pull from. You've got everyone references in the style of Akira. You've got that going. Another great resource is this GitHub page for, I referenced this in my original course, for MidJourney styles and references. This one is less complete compared to the previous two resources I've showed, but it does stay updated and it has these cool buttons to navigate different things. So like, for example, you can add in details about like effects and shaders into your prompts. And so you can click to navigate these. And so there are different types of reflections you can reference, and it has comparisons for those. Screen space reflections, diffraction grading, reflection in a puddle. You've got chromatic SFX, and it has all these comparisons for this. So it has like tons of different ideas that you can kind of navigate in the buttons here, as well as different prompt parameters to play with, which is pretty cool. You got geometry references you can make, so you can say like 4D hypershapes and get crazy designs from that. A hyperplane. Like, there are so many weird things that you can combine in MidJourney that these references provide to you. And then the last one in terms of websites is just the official MidJourney docs page, docs.midjourney.com/docs. And it has how to get set up, how to do different things. And there are some user guides with regards to like commands and certain style things that if you just need help figuring out how to use MidJourney, you can use. My last free resource is actually in the MidJourney server. If you go to the MidJourney server, which you have to be a part of to use MidJourney, well, I guess that's, you could be in another. Yeah, you have to be, especially now that it's not free. They have, I know it's hard to find anything in here. They have specific chats based on like prompt crafting and getting ideas and seeing people's final images and stuff. But they also have in here, it's under community forums, there's a prompt facts one. And you can search here for like different ideas, like the consistent character thing. You can search for character tips and it's going to find you threads with that. It's ideal not to ask questions here, but you can see, like, because a lot of these are marked as help requests, but the ones that are marked as tutorials with the flags, and you can actually like search based on these categories. So there's challenges, there's libraries of information, or tutorials. If you click tutorial, you can see tutorials on how to photo bash, how to do magical effects, and they'll walk you through some of the prompt tips for that. Lots of cool stuff there. So you can get lots of ideas. And that's where a lot of my ideas come from that some of you are like mind blown by. They just come from, you know, all the contributions here to build together a big community understanding of how to use MidJourney. Now that we've covered, or at least given you rabbit holes to go down to get the resources for everything you possibly need to know to make like normal prompts and all of this with MidJourney, it's time to get into the more nitty gritty so you can really control MidJourney the way that you want. And we're going to talk about the different versions of MidJourney. So again, if you pop up your settings menu by typing /settings, you have effectively 9 different versions of MidJourney. 2 of them don't work. So 2 of them don't work. So 7 versions of MidJourney that you can work with. MidJourney 1 through 5, 4 being the current default. V5 is still like being finalized, and it's a more photorealistic one, and it's one I recommend using just moving forward because it's where things are going. But if you want more abstract stuff, go with V4. We'll talk about that in a sec. I'm getting ahead of myself. Then you have 2 versions of NijiJourney, which is the anime model of MidJourney. And then you have 2 of the test versions that currently don't do anything, but sometimes they'll turn on experiments and they will do something. And they'll post announcements and things like that. V1 through V5 is just MidJourney as an organization training their image model on the results that they got from MidJourney itself, using the rankings on the website and things like that to continue to improve the accuracy of the prompt the prompt responsiveness, as well as to do whatever magic they do behind the scenes to manipulate your prompt into getting the result that you want without being hyper literal about your words. V1 was super abstract, painterly, kind of gritty looking. V2 was still there. V3 was getting better on that, produced a little bit more beautiful at a glance, but lots of issues images. V4 is where it really started to get great looking, but it still struggled. Like, prior to V4, people just looked horrible. People weren't super useful at all. But V4 still struggles a lot with hands. V5 is a lot better with hands, and overall is a lot more photorealistic by default. You can still do non-photorealistic styles, but by default it's set to operate in a photorealistic manner. And V5 is kind of where things are going with it, so you might want to stick with it. But you can choose any of these other versions as you see fit to continue iterating in more abstract or painterly or whatever styles that you want. So you can experiment with running your same prompt through the different versions and see which ones you like, just to see, you know, how you like it. And maybe you want to experiment with some of the older stuff. A lot of people had a lot of fun feeding abstract phrases or song lyrics or something in MidJourney V2 and V3 because it was so abstract and non-specific that you could do weird stuff like that. Throughout this entire course so far, we've been covering V4 and V5, like that's what we've been using. But there's also the NijiJourney, which is the anime version. So now with this, which you can use, there is a whole dedicated server for NijiJourney here that you can join, similar to the MidJourney one, and then add the bot and, you know, interact with it separately. But you can also use normal MidJourney with the --Niji 5 or 4 to interact, or, you know, to generate your prompts with that model. So now we can create anime style images. So let's say we go back, for example. Yeah, we'll just take our prompt, and most of the prompt parameters and everything is going to be the same. So we can take our prompt of our cyberpunk dog, do /imagine, and when you add the NijiJourney bot to your server, you'll get a separate imagine command for that bot. But we're just going to use the normal one since we're using the parameter from NijiJourney, just to keep it simple here. We're going to paste in our prompt. We're going to get rid of the seed part. We don't want that right now. So cyberpunk dog, saving galaxy, VR headset, aspect ratio 16:9. When we hit enter, it's going to send it with the Niji 5 parameter by default because we added it in our settings here. And you can hide these messages at any time with dismiss message. And it's going to render that with the NijiJourney style. Now that style, that model, doesn't always stay anime. So there is a chance by feeding it a photorealistic image like we are here, it's still going to produce something closer to photorealism than anime. If so, we need to get rid of our image source and kind of start over a little bit. Or perhaps apply a filter to our reference image we built that makes it more line arty anime style to try to compensate for that. Let's see what it comes up with. All right, I went ahead and sent it off without the image reference as well, but you can see here, this is with the image reference, so it still has very similar looking images, but it did convert it to a more anime style and take some hints from that. We've got more, you know, anime style textures and drawing here. It gets a little abstract in a couple of them, but it does a good job. It also confuses the aspect ratio. These are all different aspect ratios with black bars than the one that we wanted. It can happen sometimes. You gotta fight with it a little bit. But sending it off without any image reference at all, you can see here we're getting something completely different, though it's doing a better job of keeping that VR headset in here. And this has a lot more of that really bold, simple color anime style that you might see from stuff. But these are pretty cool. Like, it definitely does. I don't know what happened here. It combined a person and a dog, but like, doing a pretty good job. So you can generate anime style images with NijiJourney using all of the same, everything you've learned about MidJourney to this point, but specifically catered towards anime instead of, you know, photorealism or painting or whatever. Now we can take this a step further, as the NijiJourney model has a -- style parameter with, I believe at the moment, just 2 options that you could add into it. So we're gonna take, I guess we're gonna take this new one. We're gonna use the same seed, so I'm gonna envelope react, get me the seed for this prompt. We're going to do /imagine cyberpunk dog saving the galaxy -- seed, the seed for what we just generated, but we're also going to do -- style expressive. So expressive is better for character portraits to try to get more. Oh, our aspect ratio got deleted. Expressive is more built for character portraits to try to get more expressive, you know, facial portrayals and things like that out of it. You can apply these styles to anything. You're just going to, you know, they're catered for specific ideas. There is expressive, and then there's scenic, which is built more for getting wallpapers out of MidJourney to get more of an anime style wallpaper. Now we can try it with the same command here just to see what it says. But I have seen a lot of people on the NijiJourney server doing style scenic with like portraits and stuff. And it doesn't really do a whole lot in that regard. We can look at a comparison real quick, but it would if you're building a... Oh, it just failed to send my command at all. I have broken MidJourney. There we go. So that is our expressive one. So we've got the puppy dog is smiling. That one's grumpy. That one's panting. That one's super angry laser eyes mode. We got more expressions and more like avatar kind of generation with expressive enabled. Oh, that one failed. It was just going. Oh no, it's still going. MidJourney's having some issues here. Always happens when I go to film tutorials. It's a very popular service at this point, so I guess it stands to reason that they're going to have some errors. All right, with scenic enabled, we still got the smiles and stuff, but we have, you know, it has more of that beautiful background element built in to act better as a wallpaper. So you can still use scenic with portraits and other subjects, and it build more of a wallpapery kind of thing, but it's more built for wallpapers. So for that, I'm actually going to reference an older prompt we did. I'm going to scroll all the way up here to this little, yeah, this one, the little landscape we had going on here. I'm going to use the one that we did with the image reference. So I'm going to take this prompt. I'm going to make it widescreen since I want it to be a wallpaper. We're going to do this where we have the art germ landscape that we did before in the kind of Miyazaki style, and instead of a poster aspect ratio, we're going to do 21:9 aspect ratio. So by the way, at least last time I tried it, you cannot do decimal places in your aspect ratio. So like CinemaScope would be 2.35 to 1. You can't do decimal places in the aspect ratio, so you would need to convert it up to a number that doesn't have a decimal place, which in this case would be 21/9. So we're going to fire this off with NijiJourney. Oh, but I didn't do scenic. So we're going to do the same thing. And I'm going to say -- style scenic. We're going to let those process. All right, now here we definitely got more of that wallpapery aesthetic. It moved the people off to the side, tried to focus on the city. We did encounter finally that issue with the aspect ratios that I was talking about earlier. We used an image reference, or a reference image that was vertically oriented for a widescreen generation, and it put a bunch of black bars in it because it didn't know what to do that. It did that for the normal one and for the scenic style, and that is a problem. And so again, our options are we could crop it or like stretch it out or something, or just not use that particular image for our generation. I'm gonna go ahead and fire this one off without the reference image at all. But you get what I'm saying. Like it's a pretty cool little feature that you can do to start generating anime stuff alongside your normal generations, and maybe find a style you didn't know you liked before. If you're not interested in anime at all, you'd never have to touch it. That's totally fine. And now we've generated some super wide. It still struggles to adhere exactly to the aspect ratio that I specified, but we could crop or whatever a little bit. But some pretty cool anime style wallpapers that a lot of people would be happy with. They're not perfect, but they're pretty cool. Now, what if you have an image that you see from someone else? For example, I have my entire inspiration section of my server. I really like this image, but I want to know how to make it. How do I get a prompt from an image? Well, MidJourney now has a describe feature that allows you to generate prompts from an image, so you can get closer to your idea. And you can use this either by sketching out or photo bashing your own image, or by just taking an image and using /describe on it. So we're gonna start with our reference image here of the doggo with the VR headset. Let's see if we can get closer to this image with whatever MidJourney tells us. So actually, I'm going to stay in my reference images chat because the /describe messages unfortunately disappear after a while, whereas your normal image generation messages do not. It's weird. So I did /describe, and I'm going to hit Control-V to paste the image. Otherwise, you could drag and drop an image on it. This works on mobile too. And send that off. And it's going to present us with 4 prompts that resemble that image we're trying to generate. It also has a secondary benefit of, at least temporarily while this message is here, it gives you a link you can copy for that image without you having to manually upload it. But again, these messages don't stick around. But here we have, the dog wears a virtual reality headset with blue eyes in the style of rendered Cinema 4D, dark azure and purple, quirky character designs. McDonald Punk. The cool thing about Describe is it will show you so many ways that MidJourney prompts work and so many random phrases and descriptors that you would have never thought of that MidJourney thinks to use, that you can then incorporate into your prompt craft. And so you're given these 4 prompts, and you can either manipulate them or do whatever you want, or regenerate prompts, or you can just go ahead and fire them off. So since this is my reference images channel, I'm going to do this over here in the other one. We're just gonna fire all these off. So I truly believe that the most powerful way to get your, to build towards the image you're trying to achieve is to photo bash your own source images or draw them if you're capable of that. Did we do 3? Yeah, we just did 3. So we need 4. And then using Describe and blending, which we'll talk about in a moment, and reference images to build towards your desired image. However, you can also take images and do this. So we're doing this with the reference image that we photo bashed from a MidJourney image and just some other assets that we found. And we're already getting, results that are going to resemble what we want here. All right, so these are the prompts that it came up with based on the suggested prompts from using that Describe feature. So we're getting things closer to what we kind of wanted. This one doesn't have virtual reality headsets at all, but it's because it says it's a virtual reality dog. This one definitely has a dog in a headset. We've got ones that are close to it. And then one of the prompts of the 4 that it suggests usually goes off in some weird direction. So these are like Funko Pop style robot creepy dogs or something. Can't necessarily use that. But what we can do is start modifying the prompts to include aspects of each other that we want to include, as well as just use the reference image as a reference image in that prompt, because we didn't do that by default by generating these. And so then what I went ahead and did is pasted in that reference image that we used, combined some of them. So I really liked that this first one specified the dog wears a virtual reality headset. So I specified that, and that I took out the dog in hood scene and just put in cyberpunk, and otherwise let it go. And we very quickly wound back up at that original dog grid that we were achieving in a different way. And I do think the googly eyes, even when we don't specify them, kind of tell MidJourney that it has goggles instead of a virtual reality headset, which is fine. We could take those off. But you get what we're going for here. We've combined our reference image, everything that we've learned about prompt crafting, and the suggested prompts that MidJourney gave us together into one super prompt to really fine-tune things. And we wound up back at a similar point. So it's very interesting to look at the different paths you can take to get to the same final piece of art, if that makes any sense. Now, just to show you that you can do this with other images and stuff, I had this very cool, like, old magazine style sci-fi collage I found on Instagram, ran it through Describe, got some prompts. So I chose, I think, the first one that I wanted to reference, combined it with the original image as a reference image, and we're getting something fairly similar. I would have to do some photo editing, some color grading styles to really kind of get the final look that I wanted, but some of these are really nice. Like, I really like that second one and that third one there. So I could upscale those and play with those for the future. But you can combine your prompts, combine your Describe prompts, and build out this ultimate prompt that can really help you fine-tune where you're going. Now, if you don't have a reference image and you just have an idea in your head and you want to go based on that and want ideas for your prompts, there is another free tool you can use for that as well. This one is from a website called Noonshot, and it's just a MidJourney prompt helper. I've shown a couple others before and they ended up going paid access, so I'm trying to continue showing free ones. But we can specify that we want, they weirdly don't have version 5 up here. You can upload a source image as an inspiration image, which is pretty cool. But then you can just start, typing your main idea. So what if I want a sci-fi desert landscape with planets in space in the background? Obviously that gives us our main prompt, but then we can start searching for other things. So styles. And start looking at different styles that we want to include. 1980s, absolutely. This little lightning bolt is going to be your weighting, which we haven't talked about yet, but how much it should be emphasized. So we're going to say, okay, we want that style, continue. Now what about lighting? Concert lighting, accent lighting, crepuscular rays, which are just God rays, direct sunlight, blinding light. Got all these different styles you can work with and choose from or search or whatever. We're going to say fluorescent, continue. Camera. All different kinds of options here as well. Obviously, this isn't going to have everything that MidJourney supports, but it gets you down the path of trying to figure it out. So DSLR, we'll turn that up a bit. That's fine. We're not going to do artist colors. Neon blue, neon purple, RGB. Depth of field, shallow depth of field with focal blur. You can have your quality options here, your stylize options, your chaos, your seeds, all of those normal things. Materials, if you want to choose like a material of your subject, we're not going to do that because of the kind of scene we're doing. And then your size, your aspect ratio. So we can do 2:1. I don't know why their options are so limited here, but you can manually override it yourself. You're not, restricted to these. You can also specify things you want to avoid. So trees, text, buildings. And that adds the --no parameter to avoid those things. This doesn't always work, but sometimes it does, so it's worth trying anyway. So we're gonna copy the prompt. We're gonna come over here back to our channel. Imagine. And I'm gonna swap out V4 for V5. And actually, instead of 2x1, I want 1x2, so I can make it tall, like a movie poster. Fire that off. Now, this is a free tool available to you for prompt helping. You can combine that with the other resources, the docs pages, to get all of your ideas together and just kind of take cues from this. But where the other ones are, lots of information you have to go through and like still build the prompt yourself, this creates the prompt for you, which helps a lot of people. So you see here the prompt it created is what I typed, sci-fi desert landscape with planets and space in the background, but then it added in 1980s style with a big weight. We'll talk about image weights in a moment. Fluorescent with a weight, DSLR with a weight, neon blue color, neon purple color, RGB, depth of field. Has very much gotten away from our landscape idea, but that's because all the other weighting was put on this. And so weighting is the ability to manipulate your prompt based on telling it which elements are more or less important. And so you do that with the colons and the numbers here. So you can see here, I told it that 1980s was very important, was the most important element of all of this. DSLR camera shooting was a little bit more important, and then everything else was one or not mentioned. And so it built the image based on that parameter. But if we come over here, we copy the same prompt, and we put a image weight of 5 on this first one, and then maybe for neon blue color, we want -1, as in we want no neon blue at all. It will take that in mind, and it will now affect things based on that weighting. And you can do the same thing for image weights, and that's with a different parameter. So if we take this image source, and we fire off the command we just fired off, we can also do --IW, and you can go all the way from 0.5, which is going to tell it to treat it as the least important element in the prompt, but still to consider it, all the way up to 2. So we're going to do image weight of 2. So it's going to heavily consider our image weight, or our reference image, alongside all of the other weighting that we did here. You can see here, this image where we provided way more weight to it being a desert landscape with space in the background as a 5 above everything else, adhered much more towards what we were aiming for than this original image, which went off in nowhere because it was mostly focused on the 80s and the neon design. So that is very important to consider. And then with our image weight added in for a reference image, it now generated all the ones it aired out on. But you can see here, it generated something a lot more close to our reference image in the first place because we put so much weight on it. Now, similarly, if we fire off the same prompt, but we set an image weight of 0.5, it will instead focus more on the text. So IW 0.5. And then we can change this one as well. We can say 2. We can say 1.5 for 1980s. Give that a second. There, it still considers the image reference, the reference image. So here it still considers the reference image we fed it, but it then, you know, tries to do its own thing. So we get a couple with actual, you know, a person in it. We get this fourth one, which is incredible. Number one harkens back to that idea I shared before, that if you have too tall of an aspect ratio and it doesn't know what to do with that composition, it'll just like repeat images. So we actually have 2 square images in the one image because it just didn't know how to fill the space. So pretty cool stuff there. Next, I want to show you how to iterate more quickly by just generating a bunch of different images. This is best done on the relax mode, the slower mode, so you don't waste all your credits because it can get expensive fast. But it can help you kind of find your path on different things you want to do. The first is using repeat. Repeat is not super useful. It's a parameter. It's not super useful unless you're using some sort of randomization element. So we are going to take our prompt that we gave MidJourney here, but we're gonna take this prompt. We're gonna say /imagine, and we're gonna add -- repeat at the end. But it's just gonna basically regenerate very similar looking images over and over and over. And while that might get you 1% of the way towards the next step that you want, it mostly will be a waste. But what you can combine it with is with chaos. So we can do -- chaos and say like 50 and add in randomness each time. And then we need a number for the repeat. So let's say we want to repeat it 3 times. Now it's going to generate this same grid of images 3 times, but with a chaos element of 50. So each iteration will be a little bit more random. It's going to ask you, are you sure? Because again, it's going to spend some credits, but we can tell it to fire off. And then we absolutely have to wait for this for a moment. We can show the template, which is just going to show all 3 at once, or we could have just waited. Or we're going to wait for these jobs to show up, because obviously it's waiting to start. I think MidJourney's kind of tired of me generating so much at once here. And here we have 3 new grids based on our prompt, based on our image prompt, all of that, but with some randomness to it. So we've got completely different results that are at least somewhat similar to what we want. This first one's cool. This third one's cool. And prompt number 2, fourth one is cool. This third one is a completely different direction, but interesting. That's like a lava world on number 1. Number 2 is amazing here. Number 1 is pretty stellar. Number 3 is pretty awesome as like a photo replacement. So that's how you could use the repeat command to add in some chaos. But if you want to specify the things that you want to show the differences of, that's what permutations are for. You can now use the squiggly brackets to do permutations, which generate different results based on the options you specify. So I'm going to show you this in practice because it's kind of hard to explain without seeing it. So we're not going to do the repeat or chaos this time. We're going to do /imagine. We're going to paste in our prompt. But for example, for image weight, maybe we want to see 0.5, 1, and 2. And then when we fire this off, it's going to generate 3 different grids with those different image weights. You can also do it with different aspect ratios. You can also do it with different descriptors in the first place. So we're going to fire this one off. It's going to, again, ask you if that's what you want to do. We're going to say yes. Let it do its thing. But we're also going to do one that doesn't tweak any of that. We're going to say image weight of 2. But then we're going to replace desert in the desert landscape. And we're going to say desert, forest, magical, and post-apocalyptic building landscape. And now it's going to generate 1, 2, 3, 4 grids based on each of those ideas inserted. And then you can do permutations of different things all at once and just send out a ton of grids. You just got to stay organized and make sure you're keeping track of them because it can get overwhelming very quickly. But we're going to send that off. And it's going to be like, are you sure you want to do all those 4 prompts? And I'm like, yes, I am, boy. We're going to send them off. Okay, I made a fatal mistake in my permutations. I still had image weight of 2 on. So it's actually not going to do a great job of showing those different landscapes because of that image weight of 2. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to paste that in there. We're going to take out the image weight entirely. And now we're going to do it. Desert, forest, underwater, and magical. But you can see here, if we scroll up to our first permutation option, we've got an image weight of 2, which very strongly has that image weight. Still ends up adding in some people. Pretty sick shots, honestly, but like these are incredible. This is an image weight of 1, which gets further away from our source image. That one's just plain dumb, but that's fine. And an image weight of 0.5, which goes back to that previous grid we saw where the images are just not really related to our image weight at our reference image that much. We do see some influence like this of the desert versus magical versus forest landscape, and this one with the image weight of 2, where like that one's clearly a desert. That one has some more magical like vibes to it, but we're not getting the forest or anything because of that image weight. So we're gonna wait on these new 4 prompts to generate. All right, so with our updated permutation here, we're getting a little bit closer to the foresty landscape going on over here. This one's got a little bit more color for the supposed more magical landscape. Since we're using so many details from our original prompt along with the reference image, it can only get so far away from it. But that you get the idea of what permutations can do here. If you use them carefully and use them in different ways in your process, it can be very helpful. I also fired off one where you can compare, like all you have to do is use the little squigglies for whatever things you're separating. So I also fired off one where I wanted to see what one of our favorite prompts from this looks like in the different versions of MidJourney. And so to do that, you would copy your prompt, /imagine, and where it says your version number, you do the squiggles, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, squiggle. And then you fire it off, and it's gonna ask if you wanna do that, and that's what's happening here. Now, you will notice it give me an error. Version 4 does not support image weighting for your reference images, so it's only doing 1, 2, 3, and 5. But we are getting those options rendered out here. So this is with version 5 of MidJourney. No, this is with version 1 of MidJourney. It still has the V5 at the end from my settings, but that doesn't actually change anything. So this is version 1 of MidJourney. You can see the style difference I was talking about, where it's just very like scrabbly. This is version 3, which is getting closer to photoreal, but still has that weird, glitchy, painterly style. Version 5, of course, looks a lot more photorealistic and artsy. And version 2 is in between version 3 and version 1, as you can imagine. The next skill that you can use to improve your advanced prompting and image generation here is blending images together. This can work. I have a whole video on this if you want a deeper dive on it. This can work in some situations, but often it could provide results that you don't necessarily like. But you can use that blending to go even further. So let's take some cues from my inspiration here. Yeah, something like this. And you will need the links to it. You can blend any images, and you could just generate it by doing /imagine and then putting them in there and some details and not putting any text, just using the reference image links, and that would be okay. But it works a little bit more smoothly if you use the blend command. And then you copy paste the images themselves, and you can go up to like 6, I think, or something like that. So we're gonna come in here to one of my inspo folders, copy image, this will be number 1, come back down. We wanna combine it with maybe that space image. Copy image. This will be number 2. It's going to be annoying about it. Blend. Image 1. Image 2. And just send that off. And it's going to take the style, the colors, the composition of these 2 images and try to combine them. Now, if you have different aspect ratios, as I do now, you may once again end up with black bars or stretched aspect ratios because it doesn't like interacting across aspect ratios. Honestly, that's a pretty cool blending of those 2 styles, of that glitchy chromatic effect with the grids and the sci-fi desert landscape. On its own, that is pretty cool. But if you're perhaps not super stoked on some of the smaller details, we can then take this a step further with the describe feature. So let's say we really like number 2. We're gonna upscale that one. We're gonna copy the image. We're gonna do /describe on it. We're going to see the prompts that MidJourney thinks would create that image. And we can continue to build on that. So now we have these prompts that we could work with to try to generate and see what it comes up with in comparison to this. And once again, we could combine that with the next step of using this as the reference image in our prompt that we generated from the describe feature of the blended images. You see how you can build all of these features into different layers to keep building out your prompt. So we're gonna see what this looks like super quick. You can already see before it's even done, this version of the prompt that MidJourney suggested is very focused on this person, whereas in this image, the person's kind of off to the side. So we could take that composition as a reference, feed that as our reference image, take that prompt that we just got from describe, and now feed that through. And it's going to take notes from our new composition, or from our older composition for the new image. This one is still pretty cool. It's definitely doing something really cool. But let's see how it handles using the image reference. This is one of those instances I mentioned was a thing. It says open on website for full quality. The compressed version on Discord, it knows is going to be less than what MidJourney can actually deliver. And so then you have to go back to your MidJourney homepage and wait for it to show up, refresh your feed, and find the grid there. Which it has not shown up yet, but it will. Oh, that's because that's upscales. There we go. Our grids will show up at some point. All right, you can already see here as this is going, it's taking more notes from like the colors and stuff of this one, but it still centers the person. Whenever you say like a person standing in the image like on its own without talking about where they're standing or framing or anything, it's gonna try to center them. But you can definitely see the influence that our blended image has on the new describe prompt, which is pretty cool. So now you can build all of these together with what's called a multi-prompt. Now I wanted to reference the MidJourney docs because their example for this is hilarious, but a multi-prompt basically just tells MidJourney to consider the different parts of the prompts completely separately. So like hot dog as 2 words would generally make a hot dog, but hot : to separate the prompts, dog creates a dog that would be hot, I guess, if that's your thing. But you see what I mean? Like these examples are really, really good. Cupcake illustration, cupcake illustration puts the cake that was illustrated in the cup. Cupcake illustration kind of abstracts it a little more. So you can do that, and you can then add weighting to any of those individual prompts. So we can come back in here and build just an insane prompt. So we're going to say /imagine. We're going to take our 2 images that we had as reference images, just straight up. So I'm going to say copy link, image 1. We'll pull up this one for image 2. And of course we could apply image weighting to those. We can look at our descriptive or our /describe prompts for this. An image of an alien staring at 2 planets in space in the style of glitch aesthetic. This sounds like exactly the kind of thing that we're going for. We're also going to add in digital art piece. We're not going to do the artist name. So we're come in here. We're going to press, or we're going to paste this in. We're going to do : to indicate that this is the first prompt. Now we're going to come in here, get our second prompt in the style of surreal college landscapes. I'm just going to copy this one. I know I said I wasn't doing artists. But now we give it a second prompt, an entirely separate prompt. We could also hit : and do a different one. So we can do all of these. And now we can go in and assign weighting if we wanted to. So like, I can say a weight of 1 for this one, a weight of 2 for this one. We can do an image, we can do image weight of 2 as well for reference images. Now we have created the most crazy of blended prompts here. We have our describe prompts from our blended images. We have our original images as references. We have a multi-prompt, and we have weighting all combined in here. We're going to send that crazy prompt out to MidJourney. It's going to show us our 2 images we put in for reference real quick and see what it spits out. This is really layering it on thick of all the different prompting tools you can leverage at your disposal. Multi-prompting is super powerful, but you have to know that each individual prompt gets you part of what you want ahead of time, because otherwise you're just throwing a ton of extra descriptions at MidJourney and you don't know what it's going to come up with. And again, I just want to keep in mind that you can use Affinity, Photoshop, whatever, to build your own reference images or modify the reference images if it's picking up on something that you don't want. For example, in our referenced little design thingy here, if I didn't want that person there, if I thought that was, you know, it describing a person staring at whatever, I could go in with clone stamp or object content aware object removal in Photoshop, remove that guy, just have the grid, guy or gal, and have it more accurately pinpoint just the aesthetic of the image separate from that person. Doing all of that pre-processing will help a ton. All right, you can see here we have something very similar to some of the stuff we generated earlier. We have lost a lot of that glitch aesthetic, which means I want to come in here, maybe copy this prompt, maybe put an image weight of 1, and come over here where it says glitch aesthetic, and do an image weight of 3. Leave everything else together, see what it says. But you get the idea of the process that you have to work through to just continue to make more and more advanced prompts. Now there's other little additional things that we could showcase real quick. So for example, you can use verses to make kind of split view images. So we can say this first prompt as is, but we can start it out with glitch wave versus desert wave. And especially with like seasons and stuff like that, you can get a split view image that mostly has the same composition, but has different things on different sides. You could do things like, we've talked about the no parameter where you do -- no, and then you can do no text, no people, no buildings. It won't work every time, especially the text one, especially if you're doing things like magazine covers or movie posters or whatever, but it can definitely help. Okay, here's our first modified prompt where we added more weight to the glitch aesthetic and less weight to the image prompt, and we definitely get more of that glitch art aesthetic. Like, I love the cowboy look with the glitch art space. Like, that's freaking awesome. I would probably remove that extra little moon or move it out here or something, but that's really cool. And then doing the desert wave versus glitch wave thing, we are getting some really wacky results here, which I love. Yeah, it's just smashing those two together, which is pretty cool. Now, you are not limited to text for your prompts, by the way. You can also use emoji, which could get pretty weird and interesting, and it's not always exact how MidJourney interprets it. But if we want, I don't know, say we're very close on this. Image of an alien staring at 2 planets in space. We can also say looking with a, and then put in an emoji with a rainbow overhead. Make sure there's a space. There's a space. It will interpret what that emoji or emote, or however you want to call it, means, and apply it to your image. Here's our rainbow overhead. It definitely influenced the style more so than putting a literal rainbow there. But some of these are pretty surreal and abstract, and I'm gonna probably do something with them because they're so cool. And that's pretty cool in general ways, just for saving you typing or just experimenting, because it is gonna interpret it a little differently at certain times. But you can also use a microscope. So if we say close-up photo of a caterpillar, we can also say microscope. Put in an image of a microscope. Caterpillar. And often that will end up doing a macro shot because it's treating the microscope as a microscopic view, which is a fascinating way to interpret prompts and emoji and prompts and things like that, which is really cool. Here we have our close-up photo of a caterpillar, which is already pretty macro, admittedly, like that's what it's gonna assume that you want. But then we just did microscope caterpillar, and we definitely got some like macro and microscopic shots here. I realize macro and micro mean different things, but you know what I'm saying. Macro shots, photography of a caterpillar without having to specify that, which is pretty neat. You can do all sorts of things with MidJourney. These are just examples. There's lots of rabbit holes I'm gonna go down. You can also do something that I did not make enough time to talk about here in this course, but you can also do logo generation. So if you go to Explore and just search for logo or logo design, MidJourney can generate some logos. Now, a lot of them are gonna be nonsense, or they're gonna break the design rules because it doesn't perfectly maintain symmetry or balance or whatever. But if you get something you like, you can then use Photoshop or any number of free websites to remove the background and use it for certain things. And you can also vectorize it. And there's a website called vectorizer.ai where you can try to vectorize an image. So let's just say we wanna generate really quick rainbow space logo, 80s logo design. No, we'll do 70s logo design. So, white background. We're gonna generate a logo here. It's a rainbow space logo. I have no idea what it's gonna give us, but we wanna make a logo. We wanna be able to vectorize it so that we can scale it better to use it in other things. Vectorizing means just turning it into vector art. So the difference between standard graphics like MidJourney is generating here, standard like drawings or photos or whatever, and vectors is that vectors are basically just math to tell the computer how the graphic is made, like lines from point A to point B. Whereas a standard, what's called a raster image, is just the pixels. It's drawn at the size it is, and if you try to blow it up or shrink it down, it has to resize those pixels, which can result in it getting blurrier or having artifacts or something like that. Whereas if you can convert something that's already clean enough into a vector, then every time you scale it, you're going to maintain size better because it knows the math and the colors from point A to point B to recreate the image at each size that you need, which is great for working in Adobe Illustrator, building letterhead, things like that. So we got nothing out of space out of this logo, but we at least got a rainbow, I suppose. I really like this fourth one. We're going to upscale it. Now you don't have to remove the background if you're doing the vectorizer. So we're going to pull up in the website. We're going to save this one. You could just copy the URL. That went in a folder I did not want it to. That's fine. We're going to download it over here. We're going to go to Vectorizer AI. We're going to click our image. It's going to upload it. It's going to try to analyze the image for where, lines and shapes should go. And it should give you a vector file that you can then upscale more cleanly than the original. So you see original image, vectorized results. It may simplify the colors or erase a couple lines a little bit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing given the error proneness of MidJourney. Then we can zoom in. And you can see here, the original image is gonna start getting pixelated. So if you wanna use it for print or for different motion graphics, for example, your original image is gonna get blurry and chunky and gross. Whereas the vectorized version is clean and crisp and amazing. And sure, some certain gradient points are not gonna be perfect. So, you'll want to combine this with still learning art skills on your own, but that's incredible. That is incredible. And for standard raster images, you have lots of options for upscaling images. I showed briefly, there's the Topaz apps like Gigapixel and Photo AI. These are very expensive apps from Topaz Labs, but they spend a lot of time on their upscaling models. I'm not going to show too much of them. I have dedicated videos on them already, and I've shown multiple upscaling workflows on the channel before, but these use various AI algorithms to upscale your image and maintain detail, preserve faces, blah, 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 that you could use here. There's the free app called Chainer with a free upscaling algorithm. There's also Big JPEG is my favorite online AI super res option that's completely free that you can upload your images to and make them bigger too if you need to upscale them for printing. I have whole videos dedicated to multiple different ways you can upscale your AI art and clean them up and make them look nice for printing. I've printed giant posters with them. I've printed standard, 8.5 by 11 prints and things like that. I've even made apparel with my AI art that I've printed on shirts and they look crisp and clear. I have a whole playlist dedicated to that linked in the description. And the last little note I want to give you is just to follow other people that are doing cool stuff with AI art, artists and techies alike. So an artist I recommend following is Josh Tepp. They are an incredible photographer and director already. They've been experimenting a ton with AI art, but they've also been a photographer for events and for, really dramatic, moody stuff. And their work is just out there and incredible. And they've been able to use their work with photography to influence their AI generations and have now been taking MidJourney to incredible levels. These are MidJourney images that he can create incredible styles with and lots of photorealism because he has his own defined style and because he's blending it with his own photography. He can just do so much cool stuff with it. He retweets a lot, but these are some shots he took at Coachella and he can then use that to generate better AI art as a result. And he's been blending those worlds together in a way that is honestly incredible. This is something they made with MidJourney too. This looks like it's out of a movie. It is wild. So follow them, and then if you're looking for more prompt hacks and things like that, Nick St. Pierre does a lot of 3D rendering stuff, but also messes with prompting and stuff like that. And they have a lot of threads. I think, yeah, their pinned tweet has a lot of other threads on how you can explore styles and gain information from MidJourney. This has been a long course. I don't expect you to have watched it all at once. Take notes, take your time, maybe watch my video on using ChatGPT to build your own MidJourney prompt crafting assistant if you'd like to make your life easier, to remember it better. And just use the time codes, jump around, play around with it. Remember just to play around and have fun. Don't take it super seriously. There's a huge world to explore here, and I'm gonna have lots of videos here on this Analog Dreams channel walking you through it, making the tech less scary so that you can get your ideas out as quickly as possible to just make whatever is in your mind's eye. I really hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching and for your support on this channel over the past 6 or so months now. Remember to be kind, rewind. I'm Addy. Tag me with what you make over on Twitter or in my Discord server, discord.gg/eblesvox or something.